Chapter 507. That afternoon, with a text from Wang Ling, Audua directly left the office and drove to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house. Because the incident with the Demon Hunters Association hadn't been completely resolved, Audua, as the chief commander of this operation, had no choice but to take the weekend off. In fact, the curtains on this entire matter had already been drawn down, with the only thing missing was that legendary President Bai, and the operation to close the net in various places was more or less complete. This time, they had spent so much police force to launch a heavy attack. This was not only a show of strength against some illegal spirit beast trafficking, but also a manifestation of the country's boldness to keep its word. Back then, after the holy beasts were massacred by human cultivators because of some rumors and slanders, the law against torturing and killing holy beasts had always existed. But the punishment was obviously not strong enough. Especially in recent years, many spirit beasts had fallen into a state of imminent extinction, so people could not help but pay attention to them. So when he received Wang Ling's text message this time, saying that there was a lead on that President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association, Audua instantly jumped out of his chair. As for the general administration of 100 schools, Zhonglang, the deputy director, would be there when he wasn't around, so there was no need to worry at all. Along the way, Audua's heart was apprehensive and excited. He was apprehensive because he wasn't sure whether he would be able to catch President Bai in the end, and excited because he would be able to see Shifu again. Although Audua felt that he hadn't learned any real skills from Wang Ling, and was just following him around and taking the blame, he actually felt that he was enjoying it. Being able to take the blame for Shifu was actually an honor. Moreover, Audua deeply felt that this was a mental test, and that he hadn't received Wang Ling's true approval. In fairy tales, when a cat teaches a tiger to be its master, it doesn't teach the tiger how to climb a tree. What was more, Audua didn't think he was a tiger. He might never be able to catch up to his Shifu in this lifetime, but at the very least, he felt that he had learned something. For example, he was getting more and more proficient at carrying the blame. And most importantly, Audua felt that he was becoming more and more slick in handling things. This was all thanks to his master's incorruptible teachings. Learning was a gradual process, and there was plenty of time ahead. So Audua wasn't in a hurry at all. By the time Audua arrived at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house, it hadn't actually been long. It was only about half an hour. On the way here, Audua had asked grenade-throwing Senior Immortal about the general situation, and learned about that forest fairy Mr. Liu. When they entered the villa, it was Little Silver who bounced to open the door. Audua had heard from his Shifu Wang Ling before about Little Silver. In fact, it had even been Audua who had planned Little Silver's secret transportation from Winter City to Songhai City back then. But he had only seen Little Silver in his beast form, and this was his first time seeing him in human form. So when he saw her this time, he was slightly taken aback. He felt that as perhaps the only holy beast left in the world, Little Silver was a lot more lively and cheerful than he had imagined. Furthermore, his human form was a little too beautiful. A fair face, long silver hair, casual clothes and bare feet. In Audua's view, he had the potential to be a crossdresser. Master Zhua, Master has waited for you for a long time. Little Silver greeted him and led him inside. He respected Audua very much. Back then, when Audua had sent him to Songhai City, Little Silver had seen how Audua had helped him a lot. And the most important thing was that Audua was Master's officially certified personal disciple. So Little Silver felt that calling Audua Shifu Zhua was completely reasonable. Little Silver led Audua to the pit which he had smashed with his fist earlier, and Audua sucked in a cold breath when he saw it. My God, what was this? Little Silver made an inviting gesture. Master Zhua, please come in. This is the green channel. Audua. What freaking green channel? After Audua arrived and everyone was in position, Mr. Liu began to explain some of the secrets he and President Bai knew. First of all, Mr. Liu, is there anything else you want to say about exposing that President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association? Audua was in charge of the questioning, while grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took notes in a small notebook on the side. Because he was out courting death, all year round. Great death-courting senior grenade-throwing senior immortal had a lot of criminal investigation experience, which he had learned from his friends at the police station. Grenade-throwing senior immortal actually had a lot of friends at the police station, and thanks to Little Silver, grenade-throwing senior immortal realized that his relationships with the people at the police station had deepened considerably. Furthermore, he realized that Little Silver was a little toxic, and his biggest characteristic was that whenever he went out, he would definitely be sent to the police station. I want to report him, I want to expose him. I'll tell you everything I know about President Bai's heinous crimes. Sitting obediently on the floor, Mr. Liu explained in detail. This President Bai's full name is Bai Zhe. Let me first introduce President Bai's strength. This person is very strong. According to my contact, President Bai's overall battle strength is around true immortal level. And the most important thing is that this person's self-created self-healing technique can be said to be demonic. Furthermore, his physique seems a little special. Self-healing technique? Grenade-throwing senior immortal was blank. That's right, I saw it with my own eyes. Mr. Liu nodded. My tree clan's healing ability is already heaven-defying, but Bai Zhe's self-healing ability is hundreds of times greater than mine. No matter how large a wound is, it can completely heal in the blink of an eye. Can you tell me more specifically what kind of physique it is? Audiobook asked. Bai Zhe's physique is a little special. I really can't explain it, because I've really never seen or heard of a human with a self-healing ability that far surpasses that of the Tree Clan. And the most important thing is that even if Brother Little Silver can inflict serious injuries, it might not affect this person's self-healing ability. Mr. Liu sighed. All these years, Bai Zhe has relied on his self-healing ability and formidable defense to act fearlessly, coupled with that black magic umbrella that he carries, which can instantly create a barrier and open up space to help him escape from danger. His whereabouts are like that of a ghost or a god, and he's practically invincible. A human cultivator with a self-healing ability that surpassed that of the Tree Clan? Listening on the side, Wang Ling's interest was piqued, but he wasn't the slightest bit perturbed. To be honest, he didn't think that this President Bai could pose any threat to him. And it was very obvious that grenade-throwing senior immortal and Audiobook were thinking the same thing. Their expressions were really too calm. When Mr. Liu finished talking about this scene, he had thought that everyone present would be a little astonished. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver suddenly turned to look at Mr. Liu and asked a very forceful question. I'm very sorry, I would like to ask Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu, please go ahead. Little Silver. Excuse me, this President Bai Zhe. If we use mouse pads as the unit of measurement, with all due respect, how many mouse pads does Master need to throw to kill him? Mr. Liu. Chapter 508. Based on Mr. Liu's current understanding of President Bai, he was a person with a very strong self-healing ability, and had created his own self-healing technique. To be honest, even Wang Ling was a little surprised. After all, in terms of self-healing, apart from himself, Wang Ling felt that no one in the human world and the demon world who could surpass the Tree Clan in terms of self-healing abilities could be mentioned in the same breath as them. And the most important thing was that Wang Ling felt that there was actually no one who could hurt him. So the truth was that he hadn't had a chance to use his self-healing ability yet. His primordial chi had a powerful self-healing attribute to begin with, and he could heal even the slightest scratch on his skin at the speed of light. Now that a person with a strong self-healing ability had suddenly popped up, Wang Ling felt that in some sense, this person was also a talent. There was now the old devil the mage, Chengyu the master of Immortal Mansion the archer, Evil Sword God the melee expert, and Jiang Luo the master of Shadow Stream, who had been isolated. Although she wasn't as strong as the others, in any case, she was still an assassin. If this President Bai could be caught, and this wet nurse was sent to prison, they would have a complete team battle lineup. Wang Ling sighed deeply in his heart. He actually felt a little tired. He felt that he had already sent a lot of people to prison in less than half a semester, and all of them were big shots. The point was that even so, his life still wasn't peaceful. At that moment, Wang Ling unrealistically thought that if things continued at this rate, Songhai First Prison would be overcrowded by the year he graduated from high school. Right now, it was just a team battle lineup. By the year he graduated, the total number of people he caught would probably be enough to form an army. This President Bai was a little amazing. But he definitely couldn't beat Shifu. But he definitely couldn't beat Wang Ling. After listening to Mr. Lu's explanation, Ajwa and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought it over in their hearts. It was as if they had discussed it beforehand, and they spoke in perfect unison. Ajwa was in charge of the questioning, while Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took notes. This was Mr. Lu's first piece of evidence as the informant, and was also an important reference for his future sentence reduction. Mr. Lu had been instigated by President Bai to do a lot of wrong things over the years. It could be said that he had taken the side of a tyrant and helped President Bai engage in the illegal trade of spirit beasts in secret. There was no way he could escape this. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would later arrange for Mr. Lu to follow Song Qingshu to atone for his crimes as a formaldehyde purifier for a period of time. However, a mistake was a mistake. There was no way to escape punishment. The only thing they did was to reduce the punishment. According to the latest anti-spirit killing law, even if it was a lighter punishment, the minimum sentence would still be 5 years. Exoneration is almost impossible. Of course, if Mr. Lu hadn't taken the initiative to confess his crime and become a witness, he might have been convicted as President Bai's accomplice and directly locked up for 200 years. 5 years was neither a long nor a short time, but for the Tree tribe, which had a long lifespan, perhaps it was just a snap of Mr. Lu's fingers. Moreover, if they really sent Mr. Lu to prison, Mr. Lu might very well have his sentence reduced because of his outstanding performance in cleaning the prison's air. Ajwa stared at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's notes and wrote down everything Mr. Lu had said word for word. This was the first time he had seen Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's handwriting, and he felt that given the latter's lively and jumpy personality, this handwriting was a little too beautiful. It was said that a person's handwriting was like a person's, but Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's handwriting didn't give off that kind of vivacity at all. Each word was beautiful, neat and dignified, as if it had been printed, and Ajwa was a little dazed when he read it. Looking at the notes, he suddenly noticed a key point in the notes, and he hurriedly raised his head to look at Mr. Lu. Can Mr. Lu explain the origin of that black magic umbrella? Wang Ling and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expressions also turned slightly serious at this question. The country had always had very strict control over spatial magic treasures. Currently, most of the spatial magic treasures sold in the magic treasure trade market were used for storage. It was impossible for them to have the powerful ability to instantly open a barrier and teleport. But according to Mr. Lu's previous explanation, this black magic umbrella's origin was clearly very unusual. It had the ability to teleport and open up a barrier. Its grade even surpassed that of the purple gold gourd which Immortal Jinyuan had developed back then. Mr. Lu thought for a bit before saying, although this old man was only helping Baija hold the umbrella before, this old man has personally felt the power that surged out from it. This umbrella is at the very least a first-class holy weapon, and it's very likely to be a quasi-divine weapon. Its origin is extraordinary. A quasi-divine weapon? Everyone at the scene was slightly taken aback. Divine artifacts were absolutely forbidden. They were existences equivalent to the national treasures of a country. If a country had 1 or 2 divine artifacts, it would already have a considerable deterrent force. It would even have a strong say in the international arena. However, divine weapons couldn't be created. They were special products born of nature. At present, the most powerful magical equipment that could be created by human cultivators, that was comparable to divine equipment, was the world-defying magical equipment. Quasi-divine weapons, which were inferior to divine weapons, also couldn't be created. But their true power was a notch below that of a divine weapon. Even if they were a notch below a true divine weapon, they were still a lot more powerful than a first-class holy weapon. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal cupped his chin as he pondered. He was the one who had notified everyone on the magic weapon ranking list. If this small black umbrella really was a first-class holy weapon, or something close to a quasi-divine weapon, there was no way that it wouldn't be recorded on the international ranking list. This person actually dares to use this kind of strictly restricted magic weapon in public. He's got guts. Ajwa Sked. Sherfu, Senior Immortal and Brother Little Silver. Do you have any thoughts on the origin of this black magic umbrella? The truth was that Ajwa really didn't know much about this. After all, his experience was limited, and he had just graduated from university and started working not long ago. Even if he had taken the blame a few times and gained some popularity and prestige, he definitely wasn't as experienced as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. After all, this great death-courting senior ran such a large cultivation forum and received all kinds of the latest gossip at every moment of the day, so it was only natural that he had a lot of experience. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal crossed his arms and racked his brains for a while. Then, as if remembering something, he abruptly raised his head. It's the Wuji umbrella. What? Chapter 509. It's the Wuji umbrella. Tai Chi's Ji. When grenade-throwing Senior Immortal introduced the umbrella's name, Ajwa also had a look of sudden realization on his face. Although he didn't know what on earth this umbrella was, at least the name sounded very awesome. Ajwa remembered seeing a post online by a well-known magic treasure research expert. In this post, he had posted a short excerpt from his thesis. This expert believed that when it came to the life gate of a magic treasure, the fewer and simpler the name, the more powerful it would be. This theory was actually ambiguous, but Ajwa didn't think there was anything wrong with it, because he realized that most of the magic treasures listed on the magic treasure list didn't have more than 3 words. And those with 2 words were even more awesome. For example, Jinka. Those with 1 word were even more awesome. Thinking this, Ajwa couldn't help sneaking a look at his Sherfu Wang Ling, because he realized that Sherfu's Taoist name was a single word Ling. Wuji umbrella? Mr. Lu was also blank when he heard this name. He had read the overall magic treasure ranking list of the human world before. Although Huaxia's culture was extensive and profound, and he actually didn't know enough about it. In some sense, he could even be considered shoddy. He still wouldn't forget the names of magic treasures. In the demon world, a lot of the magic treasure designs were actually copied from the human world, and the magic treasure knockoffs in the demon world were in fact a fairly large industry chain. The humanoid demons who mingled in the human world would do whatever they could to buy the original magic treasures, or use some means to obtain the original blueprints. These original blueprints could be sold for sky-high prices in the demon world. Mr. Lu had deeply believed that this fake Skywalker sword was real, but his original intention had actually been to take it to the demon world and directly sell it. If it was the genuine Skywalker sword, it would be worth at least 2 or 3 times as much if it was sold to a magic treasure knockoff organization in the demon world. Mr. Lu shook his head. This old man has never heard of this magic treasure in the human world. Little Silver was already flipping through his phone on one side. There was an app called Magic Treasure Vault, which contained all the famous magic treasures in the world. The magic treasures were ranked according to their classification, and there was also an overall magic treasure ranking. The origin, grade, and creator of each magic treasure were clearly written in the Magic Treasure Vault, but the specific data of the magic treasure could not be seen. This software was only used to record and rank the rankings. Little Silver typed in the name of the Wuji umbrella and took a look, but in the end, there was no record of it in the magic treasury. I really didn't, Little Silver said. Looks like that post is quite credible. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal Sked. Informant? Wang Ling was blank. Speaking of this, it was back to the mysterious informant on the Cultivation forum, whom Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had mentioned before. In that post, the informant had already described in detail the unrest in the demon world, and that there would be a big battle in the near future. In fact, this informant had also revealed some other things in that post. For example, it was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal who had read about the Wuji umbrella in the post. But he remembered that not long after the mysterious informant had posted it, the post had been deleted by a large number of people after it had been questioned by the informant. However, as the highest administrator of the Cultivation Forum, this was a time when his authority was very useful. It only took a few minutes for him to search through the deleted posts in the background. Very quickly, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found the informant's post on his computer and flipped to the picture of the Wuji umbrella. "Mr. Liu, take a look, is this the umbrella?" Mr. Liu was very excited. "Yes, it's this umbrella." "Who is the informant?" Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and asked. "The informant is completely anonymous, there's no way to find him. Furthermore, he seems to have used a fake IP address. This person used the recent events of the Demon Hunters Association to poke fun at how rumors and slanders had led to the extinction of holy beasts, and then mentioned this Wuji umbrella. Previously, I also thought that this person might be talking nonsense, but now it seems very likely that he is a hidden big boss." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. "I actually had Little Black look into it before, but unfortunately, he couldn't find out who this person was at all." Little Silver. "Then what's the origin of this umbrella?" "Divine weapons and quasi-divine weapons are born of nature and can't be created. But according to this informant, this Wuji umbrella is actually a world-defying magic weapon that has been created." Speaking up to this point, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression darkened. Furthermore, it was made from the fur of 49 different holy beasts. When he said this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already carefully considered his words, because he had taken Little Silver's feelings into consideration. According to the words of the informant in the original post, it was bloody, brutal, and too horrible to look at. It was very obvious that when Little Silver heard this, he was instantly stupefied. Although it had already been a long time since the extinction of holy beasts, hearing all of a sudden that someone had actually used 49 holy beast fur to make a world-defying magic weapon still made Little Silver feel like his brain had short-circuited. 49 different holy beast fur. Back then, the sacred beasts only had 50 clans when they were at their peak. This person had actually collected 49 skins and made them into fur. Little Silver was stunned. No wonder he had smelled a faint spicy smell on Mr. Liu's hand earlier, because Mr. Liu had come into contact with this small black umbrella, and it was very obvious that this small black umbrella had the fur of Dog Saint, who had been turned into a spicy hot pot stew back then. Looking at Little Silver's expression, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal really couldn't bear to go on. But this was important information, and he had to share it. After sorting out his words, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, "According to the informant, this Wuji umbrella is actually an incomplete product. Actually, it's still missing one holy beast fur before it's completely finished." Audiobook grit his teeth and couldn't help slapping the table. "This is simply insane. No wonder this magic treasure wasn't on the magic treasure ranking list. Not only was it a forbidden magic treasure, it was also full of sin. Looking at it now, this Wuji umbrella was probably created by this president even if he didn't personally make it, even if he hired someone to make it. That's still pretty awesome." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. "But there's one thing I don't understand. Holy beasts were already extinct long ago, so how could he have collected so many of them?" "The reason is very simple." At this moment, Mr. Liu suddenly said, "Previously, I said that I would report Baiji's vile actions. Actually, there is another very important piece of news. When I was working by his side, I accidentally heard news about the extinction of the sacred beasts. If this news is true, then the massacre of the sacred beasts back then was planned by him." Chapter 510. There were times when the truth was closer than one could imagine. Even Little Silver himself never thought that the truth he had been searching for so many years would actually be so close to him. It could almost be said to be within reach. So, the source of the rumor that the holy beasts went extinct back then was this President Audiobook was utterly stunned, because this was an unsolved case that the country had been investigating until now. After all, The level of science and technology at that time hadn't been as advanced as it was now. The rumor that eating the heart of a holy beast could help one comprehend heavenly Tao had started around 6,000 years ago, even before the founding of Huaxiao Nation. Little Silver had only been 2,000 years old at that time, and had still been a very young child among the holy beasts. By the time the country had been founded and the holy beasts had already gone extinct, it was already too late to start investigating. There had been no way to trace the source of the rumor. It was different now. With the development of the internet, cultivators had to be responsible for what they said on online platforms, and anyone who wanted to check it would naturally be able to do so. As for some anonymous users, it wasn't particularly difficult to track them down. As for that informant, in the Cultivation forum this time, which even Little Black had been unable to find, it was very clear that he knew some secret, and had come especially prepared. Although Little Black's skills were slightly inferior to Wang Ming's, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't do this. Sometimes, what was scary was that someone was on guard. In the end, Wang Ling felt that it would be more reliable to ask Wang Ming about it. If even Wang Ming couldn't track down the location of this informant, then there really wasn't anything he could do. If this is true, then I'm afraid that President Bai's crimes are even more serious than those of Cheng Yu, the master of Immortal Mansion, and the old devil. Audiobook sked. He hadn't expected to run into such a big fish this time. No wonder it was so hard to catch. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal twirled his pen and said, "But Mr. Liu, do you have any substantial evidence for what you're saying?" "That Wuji umbrella is evidence. Apart from that, Baizhi also has a lot of strange magic weapons on him. This old man speculates that these magic weapons may also have been made from holy beasts. If we can take down Baizhi, these will all be material evidence." At this point, Mr. Liu had in fact already told Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal what he needed to say. As for how to draw out President Bai, he had already given Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. In fact, even Mr. Liu himself didn't know where on earth President Bai was. Apart from his cell phone, the only way he could contact President Bai was through a silver bell. Furthermore, this President Bai was very cunning. His cell phone number was different every time, and Mr. Liu could only use his cell phone once a day. The next time, the number would be directly changed. Mr. Liu had already used one chance when he was at the door. The new number would only be sent to Mr. Liu's phone at 6 o'clock the next morning. Apart from that, if he wanted to meet the person in person, he would need to use this silver bell. When Mr. Liu gave the silver bell to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, he gave him special instructions. There's a trick to using this silver bell. You need to shake it to a specific tune at a specific location for Baizhi to appear. Baizhi and I agreed to meet at the Central Park. What melody? Have you heard of the play of strings? Just shake that one. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Wang Ling. After that, Wang Ling used a small spell to hide Mr. Liu's demon chi to prevent President Bai from tracking him down. Now that Mr. Liu was also an important witness, he needed to be well protected. But it wasn't to lock him up somewhere, as that would make it easier for President Bai to find him. Thus, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had Song Qingshu take Mr. Liu to inhale formaldehyde. But just in case, Wang Ling still drew up 3 teleportation talismans and gave them to Song Qingshu. Like the name suggested, these teleportation talismans could quickly teleport Song Qingshu and Mr. Liu to another location if they sensed danger. The coordinates were set at the Wang family's small villa. If the other party dared to follow them, even if Wang Ling wasn't at home, the gremlins in the villa would be enough to give the invaders a hard time. Furthermore, Jinko was guarding the villa, so Wang Ling didn't have to worry at all. "Thank you, Ling Junren." At the entrance to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house, Song Qingshu respectfully accepted the talismans. Since leaving Imo Immortal Castle, under Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's guidance, Song Qingshu had become more and more like a steward. Furthermore, it was very clear that he now exuded a righteous and awe-inspiring temperament, and was in fact a talent that could be molded. Song Qingshu drove the car while Mr. Liu sat in the front passenger seat, not daring to move. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see Wang Ling looking at him. He had really been frightened by that mousepad earlier. Now he just wanted to quietly be a good tree, and didn't dare act rashly at all. Little Silver stood in front of the door and waved. "Good luck, Mr. Lu. I'll definitely do my best to inhale formaldehyde." Mr. Lu looked at Little Silver and gave him a thumbs up with a resolute look in his eyes. Song Qingshu said goodbye again, then stepped on the accelerator and left with Mr. Lu. But now that Mr. Lu was gone, the rest of the pressure fell on Ajwa. If they wanted to catch Baija, these 2 days were actually the golden period. Since Mr. Lu hadn't completed his mission this time, his demon chi had been concealed. Furthermore, Mr. Lu and Baija had broken off contact, and the longer it took, the more suspicious it would be. Although this President Bai's surname was Bai, he was clearly a very suspicious person. In addition, this person had orchestrated a rumor 6,000 years ago, which had almost wiped out all the holy beasts. In fact, his heart and bones were very black. Then, according to the plan, Brother Silver and I will go and meet this President Bai tonight. Brother Zhuo will be in charge of pulling in the net, said grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Thank you, Senior Immortal. Ajwa nodded. It's fine, it's not a big problem. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very confident. With the soul suppression ring on his finger, he had nothing to fear. As for Little Silver, after eating the crispy noodle snacks, his combat strength had soared, and he could be described as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. If the two of them worked together, Wang Ling felt that their combined combat strength would be more than enough to deal with President Bai. According to Mr. Lu, this President Bai's strength was at true immortal level, but his damage might not necessarily be at that level. The trickiest part was probably that unknown and terrifying self-healing ability. This was what Wang Ling was very curious about. Chapter 511. Wang Ling had directly teleported back home. He had locked the bedroom door, because he was worried that Mother Wang would suddenly come in and find that he wasn't in the bedroom. Normally, as long as Wang Ling locked the door, Mother Wang wouldn't come in after twisting the doorknob and realizing that the door wouldn't open. In Mother Wang's eyes, Wang Ling had always been a very self-conscious person. Locking the door meant that he was definitely studying and didn't want to be disturbed. So when Wang Ling came back, he felt a little guilty. He had gone to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house at noon, and it was already 3:30 by the time he got back. After playing a game with his dog too, and taking care of Mr. Lu's matter, he had come back later than he had expected. Wang Ling sighed, and suddenly felt a little tired. It just so happened that so many things were happening right before the midterm exams, which made Wang Ling feel overwhelmed. Wang Ling dropped his forehead into his hand. He was just a 16-year-old kid. Life was really too difficult. At that moment, Wang Ling swept his gaze over the garden. This dog too had already returned, and was lying in the garden basking in the sun like a dog with nothing to do, wagging its tail. Although he was very far away, Wang Ling could still see Dog 2's slightly puffed up green fur. It was very obvious that this guy was 100% aware that Wang Ling was staring at it, so it was a little nervous. After all, Dog 2 had done something shameful behind Wang Ling's back today. So Dog 2's true state now was that while it looked very calm, it was actually panicking like an old dog. Everyone had their privacy, and so did spirit beasts. Actually, Wang Ling didn't want to restrain Loopy Toad too much. Now that they were already family, there was nothing wrong with giving it some space. So Wang Ling was very clear about how to deal with this matter, and he respected Dog 2's decision. Since Dog 2 wanted to deal with the gate between worlds on its own, Wang Ling would let it handle it. Wang Ling could pretend not to know, but he wouldn't pretend not to see it. It was too easy for Wang Ling to secretly give Dog 2 a little help. That was right. When a family got along, they should leave some space for each other. There were some things that could be seen through, but couldn't be exposed. Leaving space was also a way of showing respect. This was the best way Wang Ling could think of to help Dog 2. It would help Dog 2, and also give Dog 2 face. Thinking this, he sat back down at his desk and pretended not to know anything. He turned around and snapped his fingers, and the lock on the bedroom door opened with a click. Now that he was back, There was no need to lock the door. Wang Ling opened the drawer and dug out 3-5 again. He decided to do 3 more exam papers to cover up his guilt today. But as soon as he opened the pile of papers, he couldn't help sneezing. This definitely wasn't a cold. Wang Ling basically wouldn't get sick, because all viruses would be killed by his primordial qi the moment they invaded his body. Thus, his body's normal immune system was always on standby all year round, and was completely useless. Why did he sneeze? Wang Ling found it a little strange. Then, his eyes swept over the table, and he keenly noticed a few very fine strands of green dog fur on the table. They had probably drifted out when he had flipped open 3-5. When Wang Ling had been doing his homework before, Dog 2 had in fact tacitly allowed it to lie on the table and watch him do his homework in order to learn. The dog fur had probably been left behind at that time, but he clearly remembered that Dog 2 hadn't shed before. Maybe it was because it had been cultivating diligently recently, and the pressure had been too great, which was why it had started to shed. All of a sudden, Wang Ling realized that Dog 2 was actually a little pitiful. It had already started to shed its fur, which showed that its cultivation efforts had definitely been extraordinary recently. Given Dog 2's current rank, if it continued to cultivate so diligently, it might go from an Akita to a crested dog. Wang Ling pinched the tuft of green fur and squinted at it. He casually pulled out a tissue from the drawer to wrap the dog fur in it and throw it away. In the end, his hand just happened to slip when he pulled out the tissue, and a few strands of dog fur slipped through his fingers and coincidentally landed on his thigh. Wang Ling frowned and pulled out another tissue to clean up the dog fur on his thigh. What Wang Ling never expected was for Mother Wang to suddenly open the door and come in at that moment. When she entered, she happened to see Wang Ling holding a tissue in one hand and wiping his thigh with the other in a suspicious manner. When Wang Ling turned his head, he was also startled. Ling Ling. Mother Wang didn't get to finish the second half of the sentence. Just the name alone was enough to make her swallow the rest of what she was going to say. It could only be said that Mother Wang was, in the end, Mother Wang. As an older person, what storms hadn't she seen? Mother Wang was already used to this kind of adolescent restlessness. Then, Wang Ling saw Mother Wang smile at him before she slowly closed the door. Wang Ling. At a time like this, you absolutely positively shouldn't close the door too hard, because too loud a sound could easily frighten a person, and when a person was frightened, it was very likely that they would suffer from physiological dysfunction. Mother Wang felt that she was very open-minded. Family members should leave some space between each other. Ling Ling has grown up after all. In front of the door, Mother Wang was actually a little relieved. She remembered that Wang Ling had been preparing for his midterm exams recently, so it was normal for him to be stressed. Young people, it was good to let them out. At that moment, Wang Ling clutched a tissue in his hand in his room, and almost had the urge to bang his head against the door. If he had known earlier, he would have used the gravitational spell. He would have directly used the gravitational spell to grab dog fur. Where did all this misunderstanding come from? The corners of Wang Ling's mouth couldn't help twitching. In fact, there were times in life when it was convenient to do so, and there was no need to use spells for everything. But Wang Ling hadn't expected Mother Wang to actually come at such a good time. This time, the misunderstanding was really big. But this also showed that the effect of the Great Fortune spell had probably already disappeared. Otherwise, this kind of misunderstanding wouldn't have happened. Wang Ling felt that he was a very adaptable person. Since the misunderstanding had already happened, there was no need to continue explaining. Some things the more you explained, the worse it got. Gritting his teeth, Wang Ling picked up his pen and started furiously writing 3-5. Then, about half an hour later, Mother Wang came to the door again. This time, she didn't directly enter but knocked on the door. She reckoned that by this time, Wang Ling was pretty much done with his business. What Ling Ling? Mother Wang didn't dare open the door directly for fear of running into our 18 again. So she simply said directly at the door, "Your brother is coming tonight. So I've made fish soup and added a kidney. You can eat tonight. Also pay attention to moderation, okay? Wang Ling." Chapter 512. Wang Ling wasn't surprised that Wang Ming wanted to come this time. He guessed that it was probably because of the space appraisal results of Taoist Guang's tattered Taoist robe from last week. The tattered Taoist robe contained the primal chaos, sword qi of the heaven-cleaving sword which evil sword god had left behind in his pursuit of Taoist Guang. And Wang Ming had used this remnant sword qi to track the space evil sword god had been in. Previously, Taoist Guang had speculated that the entrance to the legendary Immortal's treasure house might be in the space between the gate between worlds, which connected the human world and the demon world. Taoist Guang had called that entrance the inner world. However, this was only a conjecture. Even if there really was an entrance, it wasn't certain that the world was the Immortal's treasure house. For venerated immortals, opening up a few worlds was child's play. Thus, Wang Ling couldn't rule out the possibility that Immortal Jin Yuan had opened up many fake worlds to play whack-a-mole as a cover for the real Immortal's treasure house. Now that the Tao Talisman Seal's suppressive effect was weakening, the primordial qi in Wang Ling's body started to gradually adapt to the special substance in the Tao Talisman, and it started to strengthen itself as it condensed something similar to antibodies. Of course, Wang Ming estimated that there were still 5 to 7 years before the Tao Talisman completely lost its effect. That was to say, it would be best if Wang Ling could find a way to control the primordial qi on his own, or replace the Tao Talisman seal before he graduated from university. It might seem like he had a lot of time, but whether it was 5 or 7 years, it was just a snap of the fingers for many cultivators. For a seclusion maniac like Patriarch Reliance, the headmaster of Reliance High School, during the joint military training exercise for the 6 schools, 5 years of seclusion was like going to the toilet. Although Wang Ling hoped to find some way in the Immortal's treasure house, he wouldn't pin all his hopes on it. When it came down to it, if he could control the primordial qi on his own, that would be for the best. But in the last few years, Wang Ling had noticed that as he grew stronger, the speed at which his realm rose seemed to have gradually accelerated. In the past, he would advance by 1 realm at the age of 2. But recently, he had noticed that his strength seemed to have increased once again. The primordial qi grew and changed along with one's realm. He had to adapt to his realm before he could completely control primordial qi. But the problem now was that he was growing too fast. He didn't even have the chance to adapt. It was just like how some authors were late in updating. It seemed like they would be able to finish it, but it was also possible that they would be late until the next book. In the evening, it was Jai Yin who sent Wang Ming over, and Wang Ling wasn't as resistant to Jai Yin as he had been the previous few times. In fact, Jai Yin was well aware that if she wanted to completely conquer Wang Ming, she would need Wang Ling's help. Therefore, it would be best if he could bribe his brother-in-law. After dealing with Wang Ling earlier, Jai Yin had already thoroughly understood this point. So when she dropped Wang Ming off at the Wang family's house, Jai Yin still had a stern expression on her face. But when she saw Wang Ling open the door, she did her best to soften her expression and smile. Although his smile was very stiff, the corner of Wang Ming's mouth twitched at this scene, and he was as venomous as ever. "You zombie face, stop smiling. Let your hair down, and keep that expression on your face. Then you can act in Juan." Jai Yin suppressed her anger. She absolutely couldn't lose her composure in front of her brother-in-law. When the two of them entered and changed into slippers, Mother Wang and the old man were almost done cooking. Mother Wang had calculated the time to cook, and when she came out of the kitchen with a plate of stir-fried broccoli, she happened to see Jai Yin and Wang Ming. "You're all here. Quick, sit down." The one vegetable the Wang family's villa didn't lack the least right now was broccoli. Ever since Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had decided to comprehend Heavenly Tao through broccoli, he had devoted himself to cultivating all kinds of broccoli, and would send large quantities to the villa every month. The most frightening thing was, these broccoli had been cultivated with spirit soil. They had a very long shelf life. Even if they weren't stored in the fridge, they wouldn't turn yellow or go moldy even after 2 or 3 years, and would still retain a very high level of moisture and freshness. Putting down the vegetables, Mother Wang habitually wipes the oil stains on her apron. Seeing that Jai-in was a little restrained, she hurriedly smiled and said, "It's not your first time here, Miss Jai. Don't stand on ceremony, sit down." After several encounters, Mother Wang knew Jai-yin's identity as well as her gender. It wasn't Wang Ming who had said this, but Father Wang had asked an acquaintance and found out. His strongest fan was President Qi's direct superior, who was also his immediate superior. If he wanted to ask anything, he just had to open his fan group and send them a private message. As a writer, you never knew what on earth your fans were for. Actually, Wang Ling felt that Father Wang was also quite gossipy sometimes. Furthermore, it seemed that Father Wang had joined the Wang Ming marriage club in recent years and had already started to get busy preparing for Wang Ming's marriage. Even Wang Ming himself didn't know about this, and Wang Ling had only inadvertently seen it. Sometimes, Wang Ling carefully recalled Jai-yin's background. How many cultivators dreamed of being an administrator of Magnificent Immortal's depository of Buddhist texts? Furthermore, Wang Ling had heard that these administrators were contracted for a certain period of time and couldn't resign without permission. But Jai-in had been transferred to the Cultivation Academy of Science to become Reed's personal bodyguard. Reed equals scientist. Wang Ming had told Wang Ling before that it was President Qi who had used his connections to transfer her. But Wang Ling somehow felt that the truth wasn't that simple. It wasn't impossible that Father Wang was adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes. Wang Ling casually chose a seat, and then saw Jai-in actually directly pull out the chair next to him and sit down next to him. Wang Ling. Wang Ming smiled at this scene. Well, this is Dog 2's seat. Jai-in. Jai-yin's original intention had just been to get closer to Wang Ling. To be precise, this was Jai-yin's first time eating here, so she had no idea that this seat was Loopy Toad's. Seeing that Jai-in wasn't moving, Wang Ming was startled. It's that dog who was lying at the door when we came in earlier. You're even going to steal a dog's seat? The corner of Jai-yin's mouth twitched violently, and she suppressed her irritation as she changed seats. This time, she directly chose to sit next to Wang Ming. Wang Ming shook his head. This is Grandpa's seat. Jai-in jumped up from her chair and moved to the side, separating herself from Wang Ming by an empty chair. Wang Ming said again, No, this is my aunt's seat. Wang Ling. Now Wang Ling could completely tell that Wang Ming was deliberately looking for trouble. Jai-in couldn't take it anymore, and she directly stretched out one hand to tug at Wang Ming's collar. Wang Ming was alarmed. What are you doing? But he couldn't break free at all. Of course, Jai-in wasn't going to hit him, and just reached out to undo the button on his chest. Then, Wang Ling almost spat out water when he saw that there was actually a tattoo on Wang Ming's chest. And it was a tattoo of a well-known anime character. Furthermore, this tattoo could only be seen by cultivators, and an ordinary person like Wang Ming, who couldn't use spirit energy at all, wouldn't be able to see it. It was very obvious that this was Jai-yin's revenge. She had probably secretly imprinted it on Wang Ming's chest while he was asleep. Wang Ming didn't understand, but he seemed to have guessed something as he turned his head to stare at Jai-in. What did you draw on my chest? This was too humiliating. Furthermore, it was in front of Wang Ling. Wang Ming was a little regretful. He had thought that Jai-in wouldn't do anything to him in front of Wang Ling, and had just been joking. He hadn't thought that it would turn into mutual harm. Then, Wang Ling flicked out spirit energy from his fingertips and attached it to Wang Ming's eyes. Wang Ming turned pale with fright when he saw what was tattooed on his chest. Damn! Peppa Pig! Clap, clap, clap. At that moment, Wang Ling started to clap with a calm expression on his face. What was the saying? Peppa Pig tattoo, applause for society. Chapter 513. Basically, if Wang Ming wanted to go out, he had to report it and get old Qi's approval. Wang Ming had actually already broken the rules when he had taken the heavenly materials sword to catch Xiao Yunqing last time. But in the end, President Qi had still suppressed the matter and really doted on Wang Ming like his own grandson. There were actually a lot of young genius scientists in the courtyard. In the eyes of many people in the outside world, this group of people were lofty geniuses pillars of the nation, and each of them was unruly and unruly. However, compared with Wang Ming's group of people, this group of people was still a little less intelligent. When there was comparison, there was naturally envy, and envy, there was naturally jealousy. Wang Ming was indeed a little laid back usually, and had inadvertently provoked a lot of people. These people had done everything they could to complain about him, but old Qi had blocked them all. The more President Qi protected Wang Ming, the more jealous they became. Why did President Qi go through so much trouble to find an expert to protect Wang Ming? He was afraid that some of the other scientists in the courtyard would go crazy and try to kill Wang Ming one day. Wang Ming's safety was the first priority. It wasn't enough to protect him outside. He had to be protected inside. But Wang Ming had always been a bully inside. Actually, now that Zhai Yin was here, Wang Ming's behavior was indeed a lot more restrained than before. The Cultivation Academy of Sciences rules weren't at all relaxed than those of the military, and were basically militarized. There actually weren't many restrictions on Wang Ming, and the only restriction was that he wasn't allowed to go out on his own. Even if he reported that he wanted to go somewhere else, it might not be approved. The Wang family's small villa was the only exception, because Father Wang had used his fan group to let the higher-ups know. At the very beginning, because Wang Ling didn't know Zhai Yin's identity, his attitude toward her had been a little cold. But after carefully analyzing the pros and cons of Zhai Yin coming to Wang Ming's side, Wang Ling instantly felt that President Qi's decision was the right one. Given Wang Ming's usually venomous tongue, everyone around him would definitely have a negative mood value of plus 999 after this verbal attack. If this situation continued to develop, something like poisoning his own colleague to death might really happen. On one hand, Zhai Yin could restrict Wang Ming from doing whatever he wanted, and on the other hand, indirectly protect him. Because apart from his brain, Wang Ming was a muggle who really didn't know how to use spirit energy at all. An ordinary person's poison could easily kill him. Of course, even if Wang Ming was poisoned to death, he also had a way to bring Wang Ming back to life. A few hours ago, when they had been playing PUBG with Taoist Guang, Wang Ling had also learned the reincarnation of heavenly life, move that Wang Ming had used in the software. But Wang Ling's reincarnation innate life was truly reincarnation innate life. It was just that if he used this move, not only would Wang Ming's identity be made public, it was very likely that he would also be exposed. Thinking this, Wang Ling cupped his chin in thought. He felt that it was time to give this thing a magic treasure with a resurrection attribute, like grenade-throwing senior immortal's soul suppression ring. Of course, this was actually a little difficult to do, because the soul suppression ring needed spirit energy to activate, and artificial spirit energy wouldn't work. Thus, Wang Ling had to get a resurrection magic treasure that didn't require spirit energy to activate itself. Even if Zhai Yin was Wang Ming's personal bodyguard, she couldn't always be by his side. Preparing for the worst, Wang Ling felt that it was better to play it safe. Wang Ling raised his eyes and looked at the calendar hanging behind the door. Wang Ming's birthday was August 1st, Army Day. There was still more than half a month to go, so he had plenty of time to prepare. When it came to Zhai Yin, it was very clear that Wang Ming was full of resentment. Wang Ming didn't stand on ceremony. Hugging Wang Ling's pillow, he lay on his stomach on the bed and stretched out his miserable hand toward the ceiling like a vulnerable person. Ling, you don't know how scary that woman is. Wang Ling could tell that this guy hadn't come to share the appraisal results at all, but mainly to complain. Sharing the appraisal results in the space was just something he had done in passing. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming's face was full of resentment. When I drink water, she has to take a sip first to make sure it's not poisonous before she lets me drink it. Wang Ling. Lying on the floor, Loopy Toad raised its dog head. It felt that Wang Ming's current expression was that of a resentful woman who had just been abused. That's not all. Wang Ming suddenly straightened up and dropped his forehead into his hand. When I go to the toilet, she has to sit on it first. Wang Ling. Loopy Toad. Also, do you know what's the scariest thing? This guy has actually been learning how to cook recently. He even bought a dragon pig the day before yesterday. and insisted on making me a fried pork chop. Dragon pig? She's pretty good to you. Loopy toad sked. The price of the fattest dragon pig on the market now soared to 500 immortal gold bars per catty, and ordinary people couldn't afford it at all. Having said that, Loopy Toad was no longer interested in meat. It had been a long time since it left the demon world, and it had the fly-flavored dog food that Dopeygua's family provided it regularly. Of course, the taste of the dog food was synthetic and not real flies. So when Loopy Toad ate them now, it tasted weird. She's pretty good to me? The corner of Wang Ming's mouth twitched. Have you ever eaten a black pork chop? Also, that pork chop is as big as a wash basin when fried. That's not right. Shouldn't everyone in Magnificent Immortal be talented? Hearing this, Loopy Toad was also blank. Basically, everyone here is an all-rounder. How can their cooking skills be so bad? Wang Ming. Nonsense. Because in the army, they eat it raw. Loopy Toad. Wang Ling. I haven't been poisoned to death, but I'm about to be eaten to death by her cooking. Wang Ming heaved a deep sigh. I heard that her cooking teacher is an experienced chef. Who? I don't know. I only heard that the name has the character Wan in it. Wang Ling. Wan, he just happened to know a chef with the surname Wan. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? But if Mother Wan really was Jia Yin's Shifu, Jia Yin's cooking could definitely poison Wang Ming to death on the spot. Wang Ling sucked in a cold breath. It looked like he had to think of a way to make a resurrection prop for Wang Ming as soon as possible. Now, Wang Ling already felt that Wang Ming's life was in grave danger. Lingzi, what's wrong? Why do you look so pale? Seeing Wang Ling's pale face, Wang Ming couldn't help chuckling. Auntie just told me. What did you secretly do today? Wang Ling. It's fine. Elder brother won't laugh at you. Young people, just pay attention to moderation. Unsurprised, Wang Ming smiled. It's probably inconvenient to use this paper, right? Actually, I've invented a new kind of paper that hasn't been patented yet. This paper is lubricated, dries quickly, and doesn't stick to your hands. One piece of paper can be used repeatedly. It also has a self-cleaning function and is 100% germ-free. Wang Ling. HM. Chapter 514. Of course, even though he said that, Wang Ming was just teasing him. He knew that Wang Ling wouldn't do such a thing. Ever since he was young, this little brother of his had always had an ascetic face and didn't look like a hot-blooded young man at all. As for why this was the case, it actually had something to do with the primordial qi inside Wang Ling's body. Wang Ming had extracted Wang Ling's primordial qi before, and it was really very powerful. Furthermore, it had an extremely formidable self-healing and mind-clearing ability. In addition to purifying the body's toxins and making it immune to all poisons, it also had the effect of purifying one's emotions. Actually, this was also why Wang Ling usually didn't show his emotions on his face. Because there were many times when Wang Ling's emotions were about to change, the primordial qi's self-purification ability would already take effect. Being too excited, too angry, too sad, or too happy wouldn't do. The primordial qi would help Wang Ling control his emotions. From a scientific point of view, people who learned to control their emotions generally had a higher EQ, a longer lifespan, and a healthier body. But the problem was that because the primordial qi was really too powerful, it was a little too much control. Thus, Wang Ling's facial paralysis really couldn't be blamed entirely. There were times when the desire to bare his teeth and smile could be suppressed by the primordial qi, which was actually quite stifling. There were times when Wang Ming really wanted to see what Wang Ling looked like when he smiled. Although the corners of Wang Ling's mouth could be adjusted with current Photoshop technology, that fake smile looked fake no matter how you looked at it. All these years, Wang Ming had relied on the Wang Ling matter he had extracted to develop talismans to suppress Wang Ling's primordial qi. But at the same time, he had also been researching Wang Ling's primordial qi. In the end, using the Wang Ling matter was just a temporary solution. If he wanted to cure Wang Ling, it would be best if he could make a breakthrough in his research on the primordial qi. Unfortunately, Even Wang Ming hadn't made any substantial progress in the study of the primordial qi so far. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming's arms suddenly tightened around the pillow in his hands, and his tone became serious. Lingzi, I've been helping you study primordial qi for the last few years, but from the analysis magic artifacts in the lab, there isn't a single machine that can thoroughly analyze your primordial qi. Study the original vital qi? This was the first time that Buttface had heard of this. He shook his head immediately, because it was really not easy to study this thing. Wang Ling's head jerked up at these words, and his entire body froze. He had actually known about studying primordial qi a long time ago. To be exact, when he was 6 years old, Wang Ming had extracted a part of his primordial qi in an attempt to study it. Actually, from the very beginning, Wang Ling had felt that current scientific equipment wouldn't be able to analyze it at all. And the fact was that this was indeed the case. In the first few years, Wang Ming had invested a lot of energy into the study of primordial qi, and would immediately text Wang Ling to let him know if he made even the slightest discovery. Later, the number of messages decreased until there was none. Wang Ling had always thought that Wang Ming had given up. After all, for such a proud scientist, who was known as the strongest brain, to be unable to make a breakthrough after years of continuous research should be quite a blow to his self-esteem. But Wang Ling hadn't expected that after 10 years, Wang Ming actually still hadn't given up. Wang Ling opened his mouth to say thank you, but then felt that it was a little mushy, and also a little too distant. These two cousins sometimes hated each other, and even teased each other, but the affection between them was real. The fact that Wang Ming could roll around freely on the bed was the best proof of this. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had even traded crispy noodle snacks for the right to lie on the bed. But brothers were brothers in the end. Although Wang Ling didn't say it, Wang Ming still weighed a lot in his heart. On Wang Ming's birthday on August 1st, Wang Ling had to design a good present for him. At that moment, Wang Ling had already made up his mind. Although Wang Ling didn't say anything, the truth was that Wang Ming didn't need him to answer. Nothing needed to be said about the matters between brothers. It was just that Wang Ling wasn't an adult yet and couldn't drink. Otherwise, Wang Ming felt that he and Wang Ling could drink by the truckload. In the truckload, one bottle was his, and the rest were Wang Ling's. Primordial qi is a special kind of spirit energy that Little Master's body produces on its own, or rather, it's a more advanced kind of spirit energy. It's tens of thousands of times denser than spirit energy, and its composition is very complicated. Loopy Toad said. Actually, this was all Loopy Toad knew about primordial qi. The biggest reason why Little Master Ling was able to slap Evil Sword God so miserably with one slap was the primordial qi. Spirit energy was like a cultivator's explosive energy source. A normal cultivator used spirit energy to drive it, but Wang Ling used spirit energy mixed with primordial qi to drive it. It didn't sound like much of a difference since they were both energy sources, but there were good and bad sources. How could gasoline and nuclear power be the same? Furthermore, this was just spirit energy mixed with primordial qi, and it had already slapped Evil Sword God so miserably. If the talisman was undone, and the primordial qi was used instead of spirit energy to slap Evil Sword God, he would be directly destroyed in both body and soul. Soon, Wang Ming pursed his lips, then his face tightened as he said very seriously, I'll definitely research it, a magic treasure that can analyze primordial qi. In Loopy Toad's view, it actually felt that the reason Wang Ming hadn't made any progress so far was probably because he wasn't a cultivator. The spirit energy that Wang Ming was releasing now was artificial spirit energy that was released by a magic treasure. Although he could learn the routes and meridian diagrams of spirit energy output from reading theoretical knowledge, Wang Ming wasn't a real cultivator, and there were a lot of things that he would only understand after experiencing them for himself. Primordial qi was clearly a higher level than spirit energy, and could be called a cultivator's energy source for magic. In the last few years, the theory of spirit energy annihilation had been in vogue, and many true immortal almighties had already said that the spirit qi in the world would be exhausted one day. Perhaps at that time, The primordial qi in Wang Ling's body would become the last energy source for magic. The significance of this research was actually very great. If Wang Ming could analyze the composition of primordial qi, not only would he be able to save Wang Ling and the world, he would also be forever recorded in the book of world cultivation history because of this major discovery. He would become the greatest discoverer, explorer, and scientist of this era. He would be remembered forever. Loopy Toad suddenly had an idea. At that time, if Wang Ming passed away, it would definitely be a spectacular scene. Chapter 5:15. It was good to be ambitious, but sometimes it was very difficult to realize one's ideals. Loopy Toad felt that these two brothers shared the same core ideals. One was to thoroughly study the composition of primordial qi. The other was to work hard to control primordial qi on its own. The core of these two things was the same, and they had the same characteristic, which was that it wasn't easy to realize. Back to business. Wang Ming used artificial spirit energy to activate the space in his energy storage ring, and took out the appraisal report from the research institute. He made 2 copies and directly gave one to Wang Ling. Loopy Toad jumped onto the table and stuck its head over to look at it with Wang Ling. Wang Ling didn't mind, and just paid attention to see if any fur had fallen off Dog 2's body. Today's misunderstanding was too big, and it had already cast a small psychological shadow on Wang Ling. That was because he knew Mother Wang too well. She was a pretty economical housewife who would spend what she had to, but never extravagantly. But given Mother Wang's misunderstanding of him today, Wang Ling felt that when she went to the supermarket next, she would probably buy a pile of toilet paper. What's this? Code. I don't understand it. Loopy Toad stared blankly at the appraisal report. The only thing it could understand was that it looked like a map, and the key thing was that it was marked with all kinds of coordinates, as well as latitude and longitude lines. Loopy Toad didn't even fully understand language, let alone astronomy and geography. It had only been a few months since it had officially come into contact with human culture, and honestly speaking, it still lacked a lot of things. This was measured by a machine. Of course you won't understand it. As long as you can understand the map, that's enough. I filled in the coordinates based on the code, and checked them 3 times. There's no mistake, Wang Ming explained. The code was in fact the result of the machine's reverse calculation of the tattered Taoist robe's spatial location, but it needed to be calculated to get the correct coordinates. Because the gate between worlds has come to Huaxiu many times before, the Academy of Sciences is very clear about the gate. Furthermore, there have been a lot of cultivators who were spat out by the gate these days, or who were lucky enough to walk out by accident. I've also checked their accounts. Combining the information I have, the oral accounts of cultivators, and the maps of the demon realm provided by some treasure map merchants, Wang Ming cupped his chin in his hand and said, our current coordinates are indeed from the gate between worlds, but they're not in the demon world. Apart from being able to trace the location of the sword qi, this space detector could also radiate out the approximate size of the map. Usually the error was less than 10%. Therefore, from the length of this map, this place is not the demon realm at all. Loopy Toad and Wang Ling's eyes couldn't help twitching at this deduction. Wang Ling lowered his head in thought as he stared at the map. It seemed that Taoist Guang's deduction was completely correct. There was indeed a link between the gate between worlds and the demon realm, and the location of this space was in the middle of this link. As for why there were so many different coordinates on the map, the answer was also very obvious. That was because there wasn't just one space in this transmission link. There were also a lot of fake spaces that Immortal Jinyuan had created. If Wang Ling was a little more sophisticated, he even felt that none of the spaces in this link might be an Immortal's treasure house. But the problem was that he would only know if it was the Immortal's treasure house when he went there. In Loopy Toad's view, this was actually a little difficult. Currently, the gate between worlds was the only way to get from the human world to the demon world. No matter how capable its little master Ling was, there was no way he could instantly create such a massive world-defying portal. The structure of the gate between worlds was clearly a lot more complicated than that of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's soul suppression ring. The ring was small, so it was easy to refine a top-grade item. But the gate between worlds was a huge project. When Taoist Guang had transferred Immortal Jinyuan's blueprint to Loopy Toad had already seen how complicated it was. In any case, given its current cultivation speed, Loopy Toad felt that even if it could refine weapons, it would never be able to create such a terrifying thing in its lifetime. A world-defying magic weapon wasn't something that could be refined with a certain realm. Most of the time, the creation of a world-defying magic weapon actually depended on luck. Loopy Toad actually didn't really believe in luck, but Little Masterling's great fortune spell really did exist. In the 2 months it had been studying the human cultivator language, Loopy Toad had even seen a thesis on luck, which stated that many of the Almighties in high positions were in fact born with good fortune, which was why they were able to reach their current realms. So to Loopy Toad's knowledge, this Immortal Jinyuan was actually also an evildoer. There's a lot of code in here, but most of it is space coordinates. Wang Ming crossed his arms as he sat on the bed with a pensive expression on his face, a mysterious expression on his face. But I found a very interesting code inside. It doesn't represent coordinates, but information. Wang Ling raised his head. On the table, Dog 2 couldn't help asking, "What information?" Wang Ming smiled. That space machine can track sword qi, and it has the ability to detect its surroundings. Among the vast amount of codes, this is the only one that interests me the most. It represents information about an unknown energy body. When Wang Ming said this, Wang Ling's pupils contracted slightly. It was as if he could already guess what Wang Ming was going to say next. Wang Ming's lips curled up as he said, "According to the space machine's detection, after I completely deciphered the information about the energy body through the code, I found that the material structure of this energy body is very similar to your primordial qi source." What the hell? Loopy Toad was startled. How could there be Little Master's primordial qi in that place? Although I haven't collected it on the spot for comparison, the probability of this is as high as 70%. This is my own speculation, Wang Ming said. Assuming that primordial qi really exists in that space, it can prove 2 things. 1. Primordial qi isn't something unique to Ling Ling. It's very likely that it already exists, but hasn't appeared in the human world. 2. This is also the more likely explanation. After reaching a certain realm, a cultivator's spirit energy source will change, and it will produce primordial qi in the body to replace spirit energy as the driving force. Both Wang Ling and Loopy Toad were at a loss for words at this explanation. Primordial qi can be produced on its own? Loopy Toad was puzzled. A cultivator's spirit energy was formed by absorbing the spirit qi of heaven and earth in their environment and storing it in their dantian. My guess is that after reaching a certain realm, these almighties are already strong enough to extract energy from their bodies and no longer need to rely on spirit energy. This should be related to cytology. When Wang Ling and Loopy Toad heard this, the corners of their eyes couldn't help twitching, extracting energy from cells. Chapter 516. Of course, this was just Wang Ming's one-sided guess without any evidence. But scientists nowadays like to speak with data. Theoretical science was also a kind of science, and Wang Ming's theories were usually very accurate. Primordial qi had been in Wang Ling's body since he was a child. He only knew what it was called, but didn't know what it was. Furthermore, there was another very important point. If Wang Ming's theory was correct, primordial qi really needed to reach a certain realm before it could be produced in a cultivator's body. This was the only thing he could think of to refute Wang Ming's point of view at the moment. Wang Ling was indeed very strong, but his true realm might not necessarily be as high as Immortal Jinyuan's. Based on his current cultivation speed, which was getting shorter by the day, Wang Ling estimated that he would only be able to reach venerated immortal realm in the second half of this year at the earliest. His current realm was no longer like when he was a child, where he would automatically advance by 1 level every 2 years. The interval between each advancement was getting shorter and shorter. So from the very beginning, he had felt that his current situation couldn't be explained by science alone. Most of the time, He didn't even care how high his realm was. In any case, there was no one in the world who could withstand a slap from him with all his might. Last time, Evil Sword God had already been beaten half to death with just the talisman seal on him. At that time, Wang Ling had thought that with the talisman seal on him, his chances of winning against Evil Sword God would at least be 50-50. Of course, what kind of person was Wang Ming? Whatever Wang Ling could think of, Wang Ming could naturally also think of. Perhaps your situation is different from my current analysis. Wang Ming rubbed his head and laughed. Actually, I think I'm talking nonsense. In your case, how can you use normal theoretical knowledge to think? My analysis just now is that after a cultivator reaches a certain level, he can rely on his physical body to condense energy. Actually, this is different from you. You were born with full automatic production. Pfft. Loopy Toad couldn't help laughing. Wang Ling was also speechless, because they had to admit that Wang Ming's description was indeed quite vivid. But it's fine. It would be best if he could collect that energy source. This way, there would be a comparison. Perhaps that thing isn't primordial true qi. Perhaps it's just an unknown energy that's similar to your primordial true qi. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming used artificial spirit energy to take out a purple-black spherical container from the ring. Loopy Toad. What is this? Wang Ming. It's an energy collector that hasn't been made public. I made it yesterday. Wang Ling. Loopy Toad. How many more inventions do you have that you haven't made public? Previously, there was the anti-occupancy toilet, and just now, there was the smart toilet paper. Now there was the collector. I have a lot of inventions, but I don't like the hassle of applying for patents, so I might as well use them myself. In any case, my identity is also a secret. Even if it is announced, it will be announced in the official capacity of the Academy of Sciences. What a waste. Wang Ming spread his hands. Also, if we really make it public, that bunch of jealous people in the institute will gossip behind our backs again. Wang Ling nodded in agreement with Wang Ming's words. But he felt that given Wang Ming's temperament, whenever he had a new invention, he wouldn't be able to resist showing it off in the circle. He had been a lot more low-key in the last few months. Wang Ling felt that this was probably thanks to Zhai Yin's training. Actually, there have been a lot of models before, but this is the newest one. It can collect all the unknown energy in the coordinates. Known energy has data inside it, so it won't be absorbed repeatedly. If there are multiple strands of unknown energy, the collector will separate them on its own. Awesome, big bro. Loopy Toad couldn't help clapping its paws. But how do I use this thing? Wang Ming, have you played with Pokemon before? Just use it how you use the Pokemon ball. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. You want to go by yourself? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and asked telepathically. How could I go by myself? Do you think I'm stupid? Wang Ming immediately waved his hand. Although I do dream of being a hero sometimes, I'm not courting death to that extent. The link between the gate between worlds and the demon world should be a chaotic space, right? If I go in, I'll immediately break down into popping candy. Saying this, Wang Ming stuffed the round collector into Wang Ling's hand. You'll have to do it. How long? Asked Wang Ling. Loopy Toad almost jumped in fright at Wang Ling's words. Holy shit. Little Master Ling actually spoke. Of course, the sooner the better. Wang Ming crossed his arms as he sat on the bed and smiled at Wang Ling. Actually, this is the main reason why I'm here this time. Wang Ming had actually been very excited when he had analyzed this ball of energy that was suspected to be Wang Ling's primordial qi. After years of stagnant research, he had now finally found a clue. Only a scientist could understand this kind of excitement. Furthermore, there was actually a very important point. Because Wang Ming had been going out more frequently recently, some people at the Research Institute had already started to talk about him. A lot of them were now smart enough not to report him to Old Qi, but to directly report him to Jinghua City. Thus, President Qi had suggested that Wang Ming lay low for a while, and Wang Ming had accepted it for the sake of the bigger picture. Thus, Wang Ming wouldn't be leaving the Research Institute in the short term. Thus, Wang Ming simply wanted to take advantage of today's opportunity to get things done. Okay, give me half an hour. Wang Ling nodded. Loopy Toad was startled again when he opened his mouth. Holy shit. Little Master Ling had actually spoken a second time today. Loopy Toad had a vague feeling that Wang Ling was going to break a record today. But very quickly, Dog 2 couldn't help grumbling in its heart. Half an hour? Wasn't that space in the transmission link between the gate between worlds and the demon world? Without the gate between worlds now, how were they going to get there? Seeing Wang Ling get up from his chair, Loopy Toad also jumped down from the desk. One man and one dog went directly to the bathroom in the bedroom. At that moment, Loopy Toad finally reacted. There was still Lord Ma. Toilet Lord Ma. Loopy Toad had used Lord Ma to flush away 2 hired cultivators from Mo Immortal Castle, who had tried to spy on the Wang family. Who knew where Lord Ma had flushed them off to? Lord Ma has the ability to transmit? Loopy Toad was stupefied. You've been here for so long, don't you know? Wang Ming shrugged his shoulders and said unsurprised. If you don't have a designated space, you just need to rush to a random place. If you have a designated space, you can go anywhere. If you want to come back, you just need to dodge 3 times. Hearing Wang Ming's words, Loopy Toad suddenly had a little idea. Loopy Toad had actually been looking for a way to get to the gate between worlds previously. It had worked so hard to save money during this period, in order to buy the materials, to set up a transmission array, to return to its clan. Only the successive leaders of the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan knew about this array. However, the 10,000 yuan it had conned from Little Silver was actually far from enough to set up this transmission array. At that moment, Dog 2 stared at the toilet and heaved a huge sigh of relief. Chapter 517. In fact, Wang Ling was well aware of Loopy Toad's thoughts. Why did Wang Ming know how to use Lord Ma in such detail? The reason was very simple. In fact, Wang Ling and Wang Ming had colluded with each other. When Wang Ming had first arrived at the villa, Loopy Toad had still been lying outside the villa. So Wang Ling had directly told Wang Ming the ins and outs of the matter telepathically. Why did Wang Ming have to explain it? Because it looked more natural this way. And Loopy Toad wouldn't easily suspect him. On the other hand, Wang Ling had also asked Wang Ming to secretly hack into Loopy Toad's account and check its recent online transactions. He confirmed 2 things. 1. Loopy Toad's recent money had indeed been swindled out of Little Silver too. Loopy Toad's purpose in swindling money was to complete a teleportation array, which could be seen from the materials Dog 2 had bought. Wang Ling had never seen this array before, but he could guess that it was similar to a return to the city array. Because the structure of the array was similar, the materials needed were roughly the same, and roughly 60 to 70% the same. The most important thing was that the money Dog 2 had was far from enough to complete this return to the city array. It couldn't even buy 30 to 40% of the materials with its current money. In addition, it was actually very risky for Loopy Toad to go back like this. Wang Ling had modified its source. It no longer used demon chi, but spirit energy. If it used pure spirit energy to activate the demon race's array, it might not succeed, and there was a high chance that it would reject it. Thus, after considering all this, Wang Ling felt that having Loopy Toad use Lord Ma to return to the clan was the best and safest method. Furthermore, he had already done something to Lord Ma. The moment Loopy Toad was teleported over, he would secretly add a buff to ensure that Dog 2's return to the clan would be safe and smooth. Although Wang Ling didn't know what on earth had happened to the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan, this buff was already enough to help Loopy Toad realize its wretched ambitions in the demon world. Lord Ma was usually in a deep slumber, and usually needed a shower to wake him up before he was activated. In fact, Loopy Toad remembered that it had never seen Lord Ma completely transform into a human. Lord Ma was probably the only gremlin in the villa who didn't have a human form. Previously, when all the monsters in the villa were sitting together, Loopy Toad had heard from Eraser and Pen that it was because Lord Ma's human form was too disgusting with water flowing out of his 7 orifices. After that, Little Master Ling cancelled the transformation. So how was he supposed to go after waking Lord Ma up? While Loopy Toad was feeling puzzled, Lord Ma's voice rang out, echoing faintly. The toilet lid on Lord Ma's body opened by itself, and a voice came from inside. I am the one who serves the Supreme Sovereign. Loopy Toad. So F*** King Chinibu. This voice made Wang Ling sweat a little. When he had enlightened the gremlins back then, he hadn't set up their personalities, because he wanted to ensure that each gremlin had multiple personalities. Thus, when he enlightened them, he had opened up their personalities. Then, Lord Ma became like this. The way the coordinates were transmitted wasn't as complicated or dirty as Loopy Toad had imagined. There was no need to stick one's head inside Lord Ma. After Wang Ling silently recited the coordinates, Loopy Toad saw Lord Ma emit a light which enveloped Little Master Ling. Wang Ling glanced at Loopy Toad at his feet, and the light which had already enveloped Wang Ling instantly split off to envelop Dog 2 as well. Loopy Toad hadn't expected Wang Ling to take it with him at all. By the time it reacted, Wang Ming saw one person, and one dog instantly vanish on the spot like a bolt of lightning. Why take Loopy Toad with them? Because it was the first time they had used Lord Ma to transmit, and there was a chance that they would experience a stress reaction, and there was a high chance that they would vomit. So Wang Ling wanted Dog 2 to get used to it first. Wang Ling felt that he was also worried to death for his dog 2. About a quarter of an hour earlier, even the clouds in the dark gray world that Evil Sword God had visited before were dark gray. This world was like a newly born planet with jagged rocks of grotesque shapes. There were no living creatures, and the oxygen was very thin. It was completely different from Earth's. Even the gravity was different. A red-haired young man in a black cloak stood alone on a parched and cracked land. His eyes were closed as he gazed at the sky, and felt the slightest fluctuation in this world. This was a planet he had moved here from outside the Milky Way. It was completely empty without any living creatures. Not even a blade of grass or a flower. The red-haired young man had a Taoist mark in the shape of a flower between his eyebrows. Upon closer inspection, the flower looked a little like the Yuan character. Standing on the ground, the young man had already deduced that someone would come today, and that it would be an almighty. A moment later, a strong wind blew in his face, and an incorporeal figure appeared in front of him. It was like a wind spirit, and only its silhouette could be seen. The newcomer's voice changed, and countless ripples instantly surged in this world. Jin Yuan, the human world is destined to walk the path of annihilation. The savior you seek doesn't exist. You and I should go hand in hand to start a new life outside the Milky Way, and become the creator of the world. Perhaps. Immortal Jin Yuan opened his eyes and said slowly, I once did everything I could to search for him, but in the end, I found nothing. Unfortunately, just as I was about to give up, I felt that perhaps such a person really did exist. Because the gate between worlds was forcibly closed last time? The wind spirit man waved his hand. That was just a coincidence. Maybe there was a problem with the summoning array. The gate between worlds is a world-defying magic artifact. Unless all the true immortals in Huaxiao Nation use their full strength, they won't be able to close it. Furthermore, when that time comes, their vitality is bound to be greatly damaged. Speaking up to this point, the wind spirit man laughed. You don't really think that the gate was closed by someone, do you? You and I can sense any fluctuations in realm in that world. Apart from you and me, there are no other venerated immortals in this world. You're right, there might not be any venerated immortals, the red-haired young man sighed. But, actually, he had always felt that there should be existences in this world that were more powerful than them. You and I have already used facts to prove that after entering the spirit energy information era, venerated immortals are already the pinnacle of cultivation. The wind spirit man mused. I'm not familiar with you. Don't use the words you and I. It'll cause a misunderstanding. The red-haired young man raised his head and looked at the indistinct wind spirit man in front of him. Sooner or later, I'll destroy you. Destroy me? The wind spirit man sneered. You and I are of the same origin. Back then, you abandoned me in order to expel your inner demon. If I commit suicide or am killed by someone else, your cultivation will be greatly damaged, unless you can destroy me with your own hands. But you and I are equal in strength, I won't die at all. You devil's spirit, you're willing to commit suicide. Immortal Jinyuan chuckled. I've already decided to wait here. When the savior arrives, he will definitely save the world. Even if the one who comes is Brother Echo. The wind spirit man sneered. Chapter 518. At the thought of evil sword god, Immortal Jinyuan felt an intense stabbing pain in his heart, as if his intelligence had been insulted. The most important thing was that this Brother Echo nickname was extremely demonic, and Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help thinking of the song SpongeBob SquarePants, which made him shake his head and shake his legs like a bunch of idiots who did social shake. His immortal image was ruined. He had done a divination, and it told him that an almighty was bound to descend on this world before long. So he had been waiting all this time. But he never expected that not only would he not see an almighty, he would instead see a reckless fool. That person certainly has some strength, but it's not enough, right? Wind Spirit sneered. I feel like I can poke him to death with one finger. One finger is a bit much. Brother Echo's strength is still okay, 2 fingers. Immortal Jinyuan and his inner demon spirit had always been irreconcilable. But on this issue, he realized that he and the demon spirit were surprisingly on the same page. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't kill the innocent for fear of ruining the judgment of the divination and polluting the feng shui of this planet. At that time, Immortal Jinyuan had indeed thought about directly poking this person to death. Immortal Jinyuan sighed and stared at his inner demon in front of him. Are you here to stop me today? I'm going to take you back. Come with me, we'll build a world together. I'll be emperor, you'll be emperor. Wind Spirit stared at him. Jinyuan, you can't wait much longer. Haven't you noticed that my outline is becoming clearer and clearer? Immortal Jinyuan frowned deeply, his expression very solemn. Of course he had noticed, and also knew that he didn't have much time left. His inner demon was moving towards materialization, and was now almost 60% complete. Forget 100%. When it reached 90%, he would already be powerless to stop it. The materialization of the inner demon would completely devour him, and he wouldn't be able to stop it at all. When that time came, they would truly become one. It was just that his soul would forever be enslaved by this inner demon, and it would replace him as the new master of this body. And if such a thing were to happen, the entire human world would suffer a calamity. This world, what a beautiful world, Billy, which had just gone public, Remram's company, the growing strength of the nation. Immortal Jinyuan still remembered that he had gone to see the documentary film Awesome, My Country a while ago. He didn't want to destroy these beautiful things with his own hands. Back then, the red-haired youth felt that separating this inner demon from his body was the stupidest decision he had ever made in his life. Wind Spirit. Immortal Jinyuan looked up. His eyelashes were very long, and his eyes were like the autumn light of water. Let's reason things out. Although he could not see the contours of the inner demon's expression, there was no need to see it at all. This was because the red-haired youth could imagine the cunning face of the inner demon when she smiled. Just as the inner demon had said, they came from the same source. Apart from their different personalities, everything else was the same as looking into a mirror. The inner demon folded her arms and stared at him with an amused expression. Oh, what's the reason? Today, I'm going to exterminate you. The moment she said this, Immortal Jinyuan made his move. In the blink of an eye, his entire body directly disappeared, and a white blade of light drifted out from between his fingers. Like a flying dagger, it slashed out from under the black cloak at an extremely fast speed, like a divine dragon exploring the sea. God Extermination Blade? This wasn't the name of a magic weapon, but the name of a spell. With one slash, God Extermination Deception, a powerful aura instantly swept through the world with the momentum that even gods and devils would find hard to stop. This attack, which was made up of pure spirit energy, mixed with primordial chi, didn't touch the ground. Just by passing through the sky, it already plowed a huge, bottomless crack in the ground, like the mouth of a giant abyss, making people shudder. You're afraid that if you use all your strength, you'll destroy this planet that you found with so much difficulty. Wind Spirit sneered in the face of the God Extermination Blade attack. It's just a mere grade 9 spell, I can also. Wind Spirit didn't feel the slightest bit of pressure, and with a flick of his fingers, a blade of light also flew out, using the God Extermination Blade to fight the God Extermination Blade. But the difference was, Wind Spirit's God Extermination Blade was black. It wasn't as pure as Immortal Jinyuan's, and was mixed with a kind of dark, boundless power, which was even more hair-raising to look at. The two God Extermination Blades collided head-on, causing the already cracked ground to become even more devastated. The two energies tore at each other and finally formed a huge energy explosion, like the explosion caused by a meteorite impact. Immortal Jinyuan narrowed his eyes and rose into the air. He floated in the air because there was no longer any place to stand on in the soil under his feet, and every step forward would lead to a bottomless abyss. After the explosion subsided, Immortal Jinyuan gazed at the smoke in front of him and flicked his sleeves lightly, instantly dispersing it. He looked at Wind Spirit in front of him. This God Extermination Blade is a spell I created not long ago. How do you know it? You've already ruled me out, but that doesn't mean you won't have inner demons. It's just that all of them will come to me. Inner demons also contain your memories, so you know how to do it, and I know how to do it. Whether it's in the past or now, Wind Spirit faced Immortal Jinyuan in the air. If you use your full strength, you might stand a chance, and there's a slim chance you can destroy me, Wind Spirit teased. He knew that the red-haired young man in front of him couldn't bring himself to do it at all, because the planets stored in this space had been found with great difficulty outside the Milky Way. Although it was a lot smaller than Earth, it was the second planet most suitable for human cultivators to live on. As long as they laid down simple nomological laws and built the mountains and rivers, it would be fine. The most important thing was that this small planet was very rich in spirit chi. Wind Spirit couldn't help laughing. Actually, you and I just need to work together and search carefully. In this vast outer Milky Way, there are planets more suitable for us to build an empire on. Immortal Jinyuan was a little tired. They were equal in strength, and even if they went all out in a fight, they might not necessarily end well. Putting aside whether or not he could seriously injure this inner demon, he was bound to be injured in the fight. Once he was injured or in a weakened state, this devil spirit wouldn't even need to wait for it to completely materialize before it could directly seize his body. At that moment, Immortal Jinyuan was truly in a dilemma. Was it all over? Immortal Jinyuan looked up, his cloak fluttering despite the lack of wind. But right at that moment, Immortal Jinyuan and Wind Spirit felt it almost at the same time, as if the earth was shaking. To be exact, it should be the whole planet shaking. Then, there was a hum. All of a sudden, a beam of golden holy light fell straight down from the top of Wind Spirit's head. Chapter 519. It was a violent tremor that shook the whole planet, as if the core of the planet was churning. The moment the fluctuations hit, both Immortal Jinyuan and Wind Spirit instinctively felt a sense of danger. But while it was dangerous, it wasn't fatal, so their expressions were quite calm. Wind Spirit frowned as he looked at the red-haired young man in front of him. He knew that the fluctuations definitely weren't from this man. Furthermore, there was a hint of surprise on the man's face, and it was clear that he didn't know anything about this abnormal energy fluctuation. Could it be that this planet was going to be destroyed? Wind Spirit instinctively thought of a hypothesis that might not be quite correct. Basically, he had all of Jinyuan's memories. Back then, in order to find this second planet suitable for cultivators to live on, Jinyuan had spent a whole 1,000 years exploring the Milky Way on his own. In the end, he had found the one he was standing on among countless other planets. Because this planet was dry and cracked all year round, and didn't have the slightest bit of moisture, Immortal Jinyuan had named it Drought Star. After spending 1,000 years, he had only found this one drought star. But Immortal Jinyuan hadn't even finished exploring 1/10 or 1/12 of this vast Milky Way. Because he had to consider the time it would take for him to return, Immortal Jinyuan's trip to the planet had ended very quickly, and he had only brought back this drought star. Although this planet didn't have any moisture, it actually wasn't a big problem. The most important thing was that this planet had a stable structure and was rich in spirit energy, which was what immortal Jinyuan had set his eyes on. So the moment Drought Star shook, Wind Spirit felt that the theory in his mind wasn't very reliable. But if this abnormal energy fluctuation wasn't from Jinyuan, then who could it be? To be able to cause this kind of fluctuation, it was clear that this person's strength had already surpassed true immortal level. But in the current world of human cultivators, Wind Spirit and Jinyuan were the only two people who had broken through to true immortal realm. In the short 2 seconds that the planet shook, Wind Spirit thought of a lot of things. Then all of a sudden, he felt a very warm feeling on his head. Wind Spirit looked up. He was stunned to find, it was a beam of light. Lord Ma's space transmission spell actually opened up a passageway, and it took no more than 5 seconds for Wang Ling to locate the coordinates he wanted from the Wang family's small villa. But it was in these 5 seconds that Wang Ling, who was about to emerge from the passageway, sensed the aura of someone in this space. Furthermore, they were two completely different auras. When Wang Ling sensed these two auras colliding violently, he immediately realized that someone was fighting in this space. And it was obvious that neither of them was weak. At least judging from their auras, Wang Ling felt that they were more reliable than Evil Sword God. Wang Ling hadn't expected that there would actually be people here. So the second before he was teleported, he hurriedly cast the Great Void spell on himself to make himself transparent. Wang Ling didn't use this spell very often, because once the Great Void spell was activated, it would take 12 hours for the spell to dissolve on its own. Just like the Great Fortune Art, it was a great Tao that could not be cancelled halfway. Actually, in the 3,000 Great Taoas, there were many spells that couldn't be cancelled midway. After all, these were the 3,000 Great Taoas, the existences that modern cultivators called Heavenly Tao. Using it and cancelling it as one pleased, how humiliating would the Heavenly Tao be? Thus, this move wasn't suitable for school. Thus, when the light of teleportation directly shone down on Wind Spirit's head like a miracle, Wind Spirit subconsciously covered his eyes. Although he hadn't fully formed yet, his visual organs were still there. This light was very dazzling to his eyes. In the distance, immortal Jinyuan also narrowed his eyes slightly, as they also felt a stabbing pain. Both of their hearts shook almost at the same time. It wasn't normal for them to actually be able to feel a stabbing pain. After becoming a venerated immortal, the heavenly eye would transform into an immortal's eye, which was called Immortal Eye for short. In terms of performance, the Immortal Eye was naturally far superior to the Heavenly Eye. Even Evil Sword God's purple investigative demon eye couldn't compare to the Immortal Eye by 1 or 2 10,000ths. But even so, they were still stung by the golden light that descended from the sky. Even Wind Spirit, who was relatively close to it, could feel his eyeballs burning. Wind Spirit gritted his teeth and endured the pain, which he hadn't felt in a long time, and almost lost his composure and cried out in alarm. However, the teleportation light quickly disappeared. When Wind Spirit opened his eyes again, he saw that the teleportation light had disappeared. When Wind Spirit opened his eyes again, he suddenly saw a flash of green in front of him. Then, he felt something meaty smashing into his face. He was actually unable to maintain his balance due to the huge impact, and was directly sent flying through the air. F***K? At the same time, Loopy Toad cried out in its heart as it was lifted up by a golden light. This was Wang Ling's golden light shield. When fighting in space outside Earth, the golden light shield also had the effect of an adaptive magic ring, which allowed Loopy Toad to quickly adapt to its environment. Furthermore, when gravity changed, it could also allow Loopy Toad to float freely in the air. Actually, no matter where the space was, Wang Ling had to strengthen Loopy Toad's golden light shield. Because in the 5 seconds he had been in the passage, he had already sensed that this space was very dangerous. And when they actually landed, Wang Ling's suspicions were confirmed. It was as if a heavenly dog had gnawed on a large chunk of the ground under their feet. There were still fluctuations of energy, and when they dissipated, The gas that was released smelled very much like gunpowder smoke. It was very obvious that someone had already been fighting. Loopy Toad floated in the air on its 4 dog legs, feeling a little unused to it. But very quickly, it calmed down and looked at the ground under its paws, which looked like it had been hit by a primordial chi bomb. Speaking of which, did it bump into something just now? Because of Little Master Ling's golden light shield, Loopy Toad hadn't felt the slightest bit of pain, even after such a violent collision. A dog. In the distance, Immortal Jinyuan looked at the green figure in the air, after the golden light dissipated with a bewildered expression on his face. Why would a dog land here? And from the looks of it, it was a dog that hadn't taken human form. But the point was that this dog had a faint layer of golden light on its body. Oh my, could that be the legendary golden light shield? Immortal Jinyuan remembered that it was an almighty halo that could only be obtained after one's body had become a sage, and after comprehending 3 or more heavenly Tao, and using the power of heavenly Tao to condense a Dharma idol. Could it be this dog was the savior? Chapter 520. Although he clearly felt that this answer was a little unrealistic, Immortal Jinyuan was someone who had seen much of the world, and he very quickly regained his composure. There were too many bizarre things these days. Immortal Jinyuan was already used to them. In fact, when he had been calculating the hexagram previously, he had felt that it was very strange, because the final result of the hexagram would always show the character G. But Immortal Jinyuan still didn't understand what on earth this G represented. At first, Immortal Jinyuan had speculated that it might be a surname, but he very quickly rejected this answer. Nowadays, whenever something happened in the entertainment circle, someone would reveal that some G was a little fresh meat with the surname XXX. That person would at least give a range. But this simple G was really too wide a range. Now that Loopy Toad had appeared, Immortal Jinyuan suddenly felt relieved. It turned out, this G meant dog. In that instant, Immortal Jinyuan suddenly felt that the principle of great Tao being the simplest really did exist. Wang Ling, who was in a state of nothingness, could clearly hear the figure of the red-haired young man, standing in the air in the distance, and looking at Loopy Toad as he sighed with emotion. G. Actually, Wang Ling's first thought was that it was the crispy noodle snacks. In the nothingness, Wang Ling watched the red-haired young man's every move. Actually, he didn't expect this red-haired young man to be the legendary Immortal Jinyuan. This was probably the first time Wang Ling had come into contact with an expert at the venerated immortal level. He could clearly sense that this Immortal Jinyuan and the person whom Loopy Toad had sent flying earlier both had the power of 2 heavenly Tao nomological powers in them. Taoist Guang's idea was completely correct. After reaching the venerated immortal level, you could indeed receive a boost from the power of heavenly Tao. As for how many you could open up, it depended on luck and talent. In fact, it wasn't Taoist Guang who had come up with this theory at the very beginning. It was just that the concentration of spirit qi in the cultivation world was getting thinner by the day, and many experts had analyzed that there shouldn't be any experts above true immortal level in the world. So the idea that one could comprehend heavenly Tao after reaching the venerated immortal level had never been confirmed. Furthermore, there were even some extremists who believed that the venerated immortal realm didn't exist at all, and that even the widespread Immortal Jinyuan was just a legend. But now that he had seen Immortal Jinyuan in person, the case had already been solved. First, Immortal Jinyuan was indeed a venerated immortal. Secondly, becoming an immortal venerable could indeed comprehend the heavenly Tao. Third, the above 2 points actually didn't have much to do with Wang Ling. Because with 2 heavenly Tao in his body, this level wasn't enough for him at all. Although stepping into the immortal reverent realm was indeed different from being a true immortal. When he had seen General Yi and Secretary Dakong before, he hadn't felt the slightest bit afraid. But now, at the very least, his heart raced twice a minute. However, that was only 2 blows. Wang Ling sighed in his heart, still a little disappointed. To be honest, he felt that this immortal venerable realm was a little weak, but he still hadn't given up hope of finding the immortal's treasure house. Although this immortal was weaker than he had imagined, at least he had lived longer than him. Who knew if there was anything in the treasury that could suppress the primordial qi? Wang Ling lowered his head in thought. Senior dog. Senior dog. At that moment, Immortal Zhenyuan had already flown over with an excited look on his face. He kept calling Senior dog, which sounded a little like he was swearing at someone. This action startled Loopy Toad a little. But because of Wang Ling, Loopy Toad very quickly recovered its composure. Little Master Ling's aura was too strong, which made Dog 2 feel extremely at ease. It knew that Wang Ling had already entered his intangible state and was standing behind it. Furthermore, Loopy Toad was protected by the golden light shield, so it actually didn't need to panic at all. And now, Wang Ling was prompting it to put on an act. Loopy Toad could only do as he was told. May I ask how I should address Senior Dog? Immortal Zhenyuan was very respectful. The look in his eyes had already confirmed that Loopy Toad was the savior which his divination had foreseen. Loopy Toad wasn't in a hurry to speak, because if it was going to put on an act, it had to do it properly. Look at those true experts. Which one of them would casually strike up a conversation? It didn't even turn its head. In the face of a venerated immortal's warm greeting, Loopy Toad merely flicked its tail, as if it were a horsetail whisk. Its posture was very confident and at ease. When Wang Ling was in his intangible state, it wasn't just his entire body that was invisible. Even his aura was completely concealed. Even its aura was completely concealed, and even Immortal Zhenyuan couldn't detect it. Actually, this was already enough to show the gap between them. At that moment, Wang Ling stood behind Loopy Toad and quietly watched as his Dog 2 played the role of savior. Wang Ling had already understood the general sequence of events from Immortal Zhenyuan's mind reading, and had also synchronized the information with Loopy Toad. So Loopy Toad's expression now was that it knew what was going on. Seeing that this senior dog hadn't paid any attention to him all this time, the red-haired young man suddenly looked a little embarrassed. Just as he was about to speak, Loopy Toad directly raised a paw and pointed at the abyss under its feet, indicating for the young man to be quiet. Immortal Zhenyuan was startled again. As expected of the savior, he actually knew everything. He hadn't said anything yet. In the next instant, there was a bright glimmer of light in the gloomy pit under their feet, and a black sword light slashed out from the bottom of the abyss. Senior, be careful. This is the God Extermination Blade. It's a grade 9 spell, Immortal Zhenyuan warned. Loopy Toad pretended to be calm and closed its eyes. In any case, it could just leave everything to little Master Ling. It couldn't see the trajectory of a grade 9 spell at all, so it might as well close its eyes. Only grade 9. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Standing behind Loopy Toad, he flicked his fingers at the God Extermination Blade, and an invisible air cannon shot out from between them. This was the most basic grade 10 spell, the one-finger air cannon. In fact, Wang Ling could also use 2 fingers, 3 fingers, and the highest 4 fingers. But 2 fingers was level 11, 3 fingers was level 12, and 4 fingers was level 13. Because he had just arrived on this planet, he didn't know its structure very well. Wang Ling was worried that the destructive force would be too great, and it wouldn't be very polite if he destroyed the planet's core with 1 finger of air. In any case, Immortal Zhenyuan had traveled outside the Milky Way for 1,000 years before he found a planet suitable for immigration. It really wouldn't be good to destroy it just like that. When this one-finger air cannon shot out directly, Immortal Zhenyuan saw that the Black God Extermination Blade, which Wind Spirit had shot out at the bottom of the abyss, didn't even have a chance to hit, and was actually directly swallowed up halfway. When spells collided with one another, there were only 2 outcomes. Either they exploded or they were swallowed up. If the energy was swallowed up, this proved that the energy density of the one-finger air cannon was far above that of the God Extermination Blade. Immortal Zhenyuan was instantly shaken. When this senior dog faced the God Extermination Blade, its expression had been so disdainful, and it had actually closed its eyes. Furthermore, it hadn't even made a move, but was actually able to launch such a powerful attack. Chapter 521. This air cannon had been fired from the front of Loopy Toad. From what Immortal Genuine could see, this senior dog hadn't moved at all. It just floated in the air, wrapped in a faint layer of protective golden light. At the same time, its eyes were slightly closed, and it had the air of an insufferably arrogant demon king. The red-haired young man was frightened by this aura. It was truly too frightening, and his train of thought was actually cut short for a moment. Earlier, he had been silently speculating about Loopy Toad's identity. Based on his many years of experience, Immortal Genuine had come up with several more plausible guesses, but he hadn't dared confirm them. At first, Immortal Genuine had thought that this senior dog in front of him was probably at peak venerated immortal level, but after firing this air cannon, he immediately rejected this idea, because he could already hear Wind Spirit's mournful scream at the bottom of the abyss. Immortal Genuine couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. Wind Spirit was his inner demon and shared the same origin as him. Furthermore, they were both at the middle venerated immortal level. Even if this senior dog was at peak venerated immortal level, it shouldn't have been able to make Wind Spirit let out such a miserable scream with just one air cannon. Strength that far surpassed that of a venerated immortal. Immortal Genuine stared at Loopy Toad in astonishment, but it still had its eyes closed with an indifferent expression. To be honest, he was intimidated by this aura, and felt that his three views had been refreshed. Before he had met Loopy Toad, the red-haired young man had always thought that his realm was already the highest among cultivators today. Who could have thought that there really was a realm higher than venerated immortal? That was because one had to undergo the samsara spirit tribulation to break through to venerated immortal, which in turn consumed a tremendous amount of spirit energy of heaven and earth. Inferring from the concentration of spirit energy in this era, it was indeed as scientists had said. No one could cultivate to venerated immortal level, let alone an existence stronger than that. Immortal Genuine had been able to cultivate to this point partly because his cultivation was indeed very high, but a large part of it had actually been luck. That was because Immortal Genuine had discovered an energy body that could replace spirit energy, and was even denser than it was, and he had borrowed this new energy body to reach this step. It had been an extremely painful process. When the energy body, which was even stronger than spirit energy, had filled his body, he had almost wanted to die, and his inner demon, which he now called Wind Spirit, had been separated when he had received the new energy. At the bottom of the abyss, Wind Spirit sank another few hundred meters after being hit by the cannon. However, his aura still existed and he did not die. Only one of his arms was already broken. Wind Spirit gritted his teeth and immediately used a healing spell to heal his wounds. However, the healing speed was extremely slow. Heavy damage effect. He had never thought that the spell would have such a special characteristic. Even more so, he did not expect that a level 10 spell that could easily devour the god-destroying blade was cast by a dog. This was definitely not the power of an immortal sovereign. An immortal Empyrean's destructive power wouldn't be so great, but that strike just now nearly killed him. So when Wind Spirit floated up from the bottom of the abyss, his face covered in dirt, Immortal Genuine was once again stunned by the scene in front of him. This was because Wind Spirit had suffered heavy injuries. His mouth and nose were bleeding, and most importantly, his right arm had actually been smashed by that attack. Standing behind Loopy Toad in his incorporeal form, Wang Ling carefully observed Wind Spirit in front of him. This was a mass of energy formed from Immortal Genuine's inner demon, but it was gradually turning solid and exuding an evil aura, which was stronger than that of evil sword gods. After all, their realms weren't on the same level. Wang Ling hadn't immediately killed Wind Spirit in one blow, but had held back. On one hand, it was his first time running into a venerated immortal, and he wanted to test his strength. On the other hand, he didn't want to expose his identity in front of Immortal Genuine at the moment, and it just so happened that this inner demon was here to experiment on. Wang Ling felt that this was simply a heaven-sent opportunity. This was an existence that had mutated from an energy body and transcended the 3 realms and the 5 elements. It shouldn't exist in this world. so Wang Ling wouldn't feel guilty even if he truly destroyed it. After that friendly and harmonious test just now, Wang Ling had indeed discovered the difference between a venerated immortal and a true immortal, because he had sensed primordial qi in the god-destroying blade just now. Although this primordial qi was far less powerful than his own. Why was Wang Ling's spell so destructive? Because it was a mixture of primordial qi and spirit energy. As Wang Ming had guessed, venerated immortals already had primordial qi in their bodies. But the truth was that the main medium for activating spells was still spirit energy. Since the primary and secondary factors were different, the effects of the spells would be completely different. At that moment, the atmosphere was extremely solemn. Wang Ling told Loopy Toad to keep its eyes closed to avoid being seen through. This wind spirit hadn't completely materialized yet, and its facial features couldn't be seen clearly. But Wang Ling could still sense its resentful gaze, and its entire body was filled with hostility. If Loopy Toad met this kind of gaze head-on, its legs would definitely turn to jelly. Wang Ling habitually called this kind of oppressive gaze the jelly legs stare. But this kind of stare had no effect on Wang Ling at all. Essentially, the oppressive gaze was meant to evoke fear in a person's spirit. The problem was that the primordial qi in Wang Ling's body could help him control his emotions. Not to mention the fact that he wasn't afraid at all. Even if he wanted to be afraid, he wouldn't be. So in a normal situation, he just needed to steady his mind and not meet the other party's gaze. Loopy Toad closed its eyes. As for its mind, it was protected by its own golden light shield, so there was no need to worry. Very quickly, Wind Spirit, who was floating in the air, couldn't help but grit his teeth as he realized that his immortal eye suppression didn't have any effect on this dog at all. The main point was that this dog actually didn't even open its eyes. He was actually being looked down upon by a dog. As the hostility grew thicker and thicker, Wang Ling sensed abnormal energy fluctuations churning inside Wind Spirit's body, and at the same time, its aura also soared. Senior dog, be careful. This Wind Spirit is the manifestation of my inner demon, and the hostility will make him go berserk. Immortal Jinyuan warned. To be honest, it had been a very long time since he had seen Wind Spirit in a berserk state. Before Wind Spirit's physical form had reached this level, Immortal Jinyuan had found several opportunities to almost exterminate him. But each time, at a critical juncture, Wind Spirit would go berserk. In this berserk state, Wind Spirit's combat ability was very strong. Every time it came to this, Immortal Jinyuan would have no choice but to avoid battle. That was because there was a big prerequisite to dealing with Wind Spirit, and that was that Immortal Jinyuan couldn't be seriously injured. Otherwise he could be devoured by this inner demon at any time. Senior dog, be careful, the red-haired young man shouted. At that moment, Wind Spirit had already launched his second round of attacks. He rushed over. His fist struck Loopy Toad's golden light shield. And then, his entire body was directly sent flying. Immortal Jinyuan. Very well, senior dog, pretend I didn't say anything. Chapter 522. Wang Ling's protective golden light was so powerful that even a venerated immortal couldn't break through it. However, although Wind Spirit was bounced back, he did not suffer too much damage. That blow just now was just a probing attack. He was testing the strength of the protective golden light. As a result, not only did the punch send him flying, but even his entire left arm was numb. What a powerful protective golden light! Wind Spirit exclaimed in his heart. Fortunately, he was quick-witted and did not use his full strength. Otherwise, the backlash from the protective golden light would only cause him to suffer the consequences. In this berserk state, the energy in Wind Spirit's body was abnormally restless, and the broken arm that Wang Ling had smashed apart earlier was now actually reformed with wisps of black qi. Wang Ling wasn't the slightest bit surprised. If this person had a human body, it would have been impossible for him to recover in a short period of time after Wang Ling had destroyed his arm and the heavy injury effect. However, the essence of the Wind Spirit was a high-density mutated energy body. It was not strange for it to extract a portion of the high-density energy in its body and turn it into 4 limbs. Wind Spirit pinched his new right arm as he stared at the red-haired young man in the air in the distance and laughed sinisterly. Jinyuan, are all you human cultivators so cowardly? You actually need to rely on a dog to save them? Buttface eyes couldn't help but twitch. What the hell? This guy actually discriminated against animals. You are not allowed to talk about senior dog like that. In the air, Immortal Jinyuan shouted sternly. Since entering the modern era, humans and spirit beasts have adhered to the principle of peaceful coexistence. As for the spirit beast contract, it's also based on equal cooperation. At the very least, we are all living beings, but you are not. Wang Ling nodded and felt that this was already pretty straightforward. To put it simply, you are not human. There was nothing wrong with what he said, but it completely enraged Wind Spirit. But don't you forget who created me. He let out a sharp shriek, and the ear-piercing sound waves rolled up a huge spirit tide. It surged wantonly, and even the sand in the vicinity was swept up. For a moment, the sky changed color, and the wind blew and clouds surged. Wang Ling looked up at the sky. Drought-Star's sky was gray without the slightest bit of light, and there wasn't a single drop of water here. But at that moment, a vast expanse of dark clouds had gathered in the sky, and it looked like it was going to rain heavily. The emotions of an immortal venerable could cause a phenomenon in the world. At that moment, Wang Ling made a second discovery. This was a very small discovery, but it could lead to an inference, and that was related to the density of the primordial qi that could be produced in the body of an immortal sovereign. Because the concentration of his primordial qi was too high, it directly had the effect of purifying his emotions. Even if he suppressed the Tao Talisman, the concentration was only restored to a normal level for Wang Ling. So he usually had a poker face and couldn't smile even if he wanted to. After wearing the talisman, the ratio of the original qi to the spiritual power in his body was 50%. If he wanted to express his emotions normally, the concentration of the original qi had to be suppressed to 15% to 20%. This was the data that Wang Ming had calculated. Wang Ling remembered that the first version of the talisman seal that Wang Ming had developed could suppress the concentration of his primordial qi to 25%. It was just that the talisman's effectiveness had been getting lower and lower over the years. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't refute Wind Spirit's point of view, because this was the truth. Wind Spirit had indeed been born because of him, and it could be said that Wind Spirit's brain contained the darkest side of Immortal Jinyuan's heart. But even so, it was also true that this Wind Spirit wasn't a normal living creature. If he wasn't eliminated, there would be no end of trouble in the future. But Wind Spirit didn't think so. Because the heart demon had been separated from Immortal Jinyuan, Wind Spirit subconsciously believed that he was in fact a human. So after hearing the red-haired young man's impassioned speech in defense of Senior Dog, Wind Spirit was almost instantly enraged. After turning invisible, Wang Ling could clearly see a black stream of air rapidly swirling around inside his body. This was none other than the vicious energy produced by the heart demon, which contained arrogance, jealousy, rage, sloth, greed, lust, and lust. Usually, the Great Purification spell was Wang Ling's first choice to deal with this kind of unclean thing. But not today, because Immortal Jinyuan had to personally kill this Wind Spirit. Wind Spirit had said before that if he killed himself, or was killed by someone else, it would greatly damage Immortal Jinyuan's cultivation. Thus, Wang Ling had to beat the other party to critical health, and let Immortal Jinyuan personally kill him. Behind Loopy Toad, Wang Ling felt a faint resentment in his heart. Why was this the control branch he was familiar with again? What scores were the most difficult in exams? 60 and the average score were the most difficult. But in a showdown between cultivators, the most difficult was this kind of deathly situation. Wind Spirit knew that this green-furred dog in front of him wasn't simple. Since he couldn't break through the golden light shield, melee combat was definitely out of the question. Narrowing his eyes, Wind Spirit decided to directly release his ultimate killing move and destroy everything here. Jinyuan, I won't be soft today. At that moment Wind Spirit, in his berserk state, shouted softly, and his voice directly whistled through the air to shake the whole planet. It was as if he was standing in the eye of a storm, as black vicious energy swirled around him like a vortex. After a few seconds, the vicious energy around him actually started to gradually condense. He actually absorbed it. Immortal Jinyuan was also startled at this scene. In the previous few matches, Wind Spirit in his berserk state had already been very difficult to deal with in melee combat alone. Wind Spirit would wrap the vicious energy around his fists to multiply his strength, then use his Ripple Sprint spell to create an aura. But this was the first time Immortal Jinyuan had seen this move today, and he had no idea what the other party was going to do at all. After absorbing all the vicious energy into his body, Wind Spirit's body actually turned black straight away. Loopy Toad's eyes narrowed into slits as it was stupefied by the completely black Wind Spirit. Wasn't this little black downstairs? Wind Spirit smiled sinisterly as he looked at Immortal Jinyuan. Jinyuan, have you ever seen a grade 12 spell? Grade 12. Immortal Jinyuan was stupefied. The most powerful killing move he could use now was only grade 11. Furthermore, this move contained 2 of his great heavenly Dao. This was a killing move that he absolutely couldn't use unless he had no other choice. It had the power to destroy a planet. Grade 12. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't imagine it at all. Very quickly, Wang Ling noticed that the black color of Wind Spirit's body had returned to normal, and there was a small ball the size of a glass bullet on his finger, which wouldn't be noticed at all if one didn't look carefully. After Wind Spirit went berserk, he had absorbed all the materialized vicious energy and condensed it into this small black ball. Although it was very small, it gave people a feeling that the power wasn't that great. But it was just an illusion. When Father Wang was writing, readers often complained that his chapters were too short, but this was actually also an illusion. Chapter 523. A grade 11 spell was already a killer move that could destroy a planet. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't imagine how powerful a grade 12 spell could be. One of the biggest reasons why he hadn't been able to take down Wind Spirit after so much time, and hadn't been able to completely exterminate him, was that when Wind Spirit entered a berserk state, the vicious energy on his body multiplied his strength. In this berserk state, Immortal Jinyuan already found it hard to withstand pure hand-to-hand combat, and had almost been injured several times. But the red-haired young man never expected that this vicious energy could actually be combined with a spell to double its power. Furthermore, he had never seen the spell that Wind Spirit was using before, and had no idea what would happen. The black magic ball in Wind Spirit's hand floated above his palm from a long distance away. Although it was only the size of a marble, the extremely terrifying energy contained inside made the young man frown. In the next moment, Wind Spirit made his move. He flew higher and looked down from above, and the small black ball, which had originally been floating above his palm, actually flew into the sky in an instant. He spread his arms wide. Let the world feel pain. Loopy Toad. Immortal Jinyuan. Wang Ling. Somehow, Wang Ling felt that this scene was a little familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. The moment the black magic ball merged into the sky, the dark sky, which had been covered by thunderclouds, instantly became quiet, and even the clouds seemed to have stopped moving. At that moment, Immortal Jinyuan looked up at the sky, lost in thought for a moment. He knew that this was the calm before the storm. The power of this magic ball was enough to turn everything into dead silence. This was the first time that the red-haired young man had encountered a grade 12 spell, and he was shaken by this demonic power. Although a grade 11 spell could destroy a planet, it couldn't possibly be so powerful as to seal off the space of an entire planet. But at that moment, Immortal Jinyuan used the immortal eye to see that the entire drought star was like a sparrow trapped in a birdcage. It was covered in layers of that vicious black energy, which gradually shrank inward. Wang Ling also saw this scene. Although he didn't know what this spell was called, he didn't know what it was called. Although he didn't know what this spell was called, it was very obvious that this was a spell that used energy to seal off space and compress it continuously from the outside to the inside, ultimately detonating the planet's core. and causing an explosion. The space has already been sealed. Senior dog, we can't get out. How many years had it been? In that moment, that fear of death welled up in his heart again, causing his jade mansion to tremble violently. He had seen many big scenes and encountered countless dangers, but none of them had brought him as much fear as this one. It had been a long time since he had felt fear. The oppressive feeling of death that came from the depths of his soul made the young man feel a little suffocated at this moment. I call this move the Heavenly Star Explosion. Feng Ling laughed evilly. There was a hint of savagery in his laughter. All of you must die today. As soon as he said this, Wang Ling suddenly felt his body grow heavier. Under the influence of this evil energy, Drought Star's gravity became even stronger. I'm leading us to the star core? Immortal Jinyuan frowned as he struggled to keep himself upright and not sink. However, the gravitational force gradually increased. In just a few seconds, the gravitational force had increased by dozens of times. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help grit his teeth. It was extremely hard for him to keep up. But at this rate, he could only hold on for another 2 minutes at most. If it was as Feng Ling said, he would die without a doubt. After struggling for dozens of seconds, he felt his eyelids grow heavier, and he wouldn't be able to keep his eyes open. It looked like this senior dog wasn't the real savior. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help sighing. At that moment, he turned his head to look at this senior dog next to him. Senior, it's a pleasure to fight alongside you. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. Immortal Jinyuan sighed with emotion in his heart. He had wanted to say something like, it's a pleasure to meet you, or, it's an honor to fight alongside you. But very quickly, he realized something. This senior dog was still floating in the air as motionless as before. And there wasn't the slightest change in the expression on its dog head. The point was that this senior dog's dog fur was actually floating in the air. It seemed like it wasn't affected by the gravity at all. Loopy Toad stretched out a paw to point at the red-haired young man next to it, and a ripple spread out from its paw. Of course, this was actually Wang Ling's incorporeal form, casting a spell to fix this abnormal gravity. A grade 12 spell was strong, but no matter how strong it was, it couldn't be stronger than Heavenly Tao. Loopy Toad was all too clear on this point. Each of the 3,000 great spells that its little master Ling had mastered was a grade 15 spell. What was this grade 12 spell going to use to fight Heavenly Tao? Gravity has been restored? Immortal Jinyuan felt this change in disbelief, as the pressure on his body instantly dissipated completely. Sweeping his immortal eye over Drought Star, he saw that the layer of evil and vicious chi wrapped around it hadn't dissipated. This meant that the divine exploding Heavenly Star's spell hadn't been lifted. Furthermore, under the effect of gravity, huge sinkholes started to appear in the parched and cracked ground as it gradually collapsed. It seemed that the gravity on his body had been corrected. Immortal Jinyuan sucked in a cold breath of air. In the face of this large-scale AoE spell attack, his gravity had actually been single-handedly corrected. He once again witnessed how extraordinary this senior dog was. And just now, he had actually doubted the true identity of this senior dog savior. What a stupid idea. Immortal Jinyuan stared at Loopy Toad with excitement written all over his face. At that moment, Immortal Jinyuan made an important decision. If he won this battle, he would wholeheartedly become a dog bragger. He would follow in Senior Dog's footsteps and reach the peak of cultivation. What was going on? On the other side, Wind Spirit was also startled when he saw this, and couldn't help tilting his neck. He carefully checked the state of the spell, and found that there was nothing wrong with it. The divine exploding Heavenly Stars was operating normally, and the space here had been sealed off. Apart from the spellcaster, no one could escape. The divine exploding Heavenly Stars had increased Drought Star's gravity by several hundred times. Wind Spirit had initially wanted to see what kind of expression this dog and Jinyuan would have when they were pulled to the edge of the star's core by the immense gravity. But he never expected that the dog would somehow be able to ignore the effect of gravity. How had it done this? Wind Spirit's expression turned a little solemn. On the other side, Wang Ling had more or less finished analyzing the principle behind the divine exploding heavenly stars. Actually, it was more or less the same as Wang Ling had guessed earlier. Even with Wind Spirit's evil aura, this divine exploding heavenly stars definitely had to be fused with the nomological laws of heavenly Tao in order to unleash its explosive power. After reaching the venerated immortal realm, immortal Zhenyuan had only comprehended two heavenly Tao, but the crucial thing was that he hadn't grasped the essence of these two heavenly Tao, just like evil sword god from before. Thus, since heavenly Tao was fused into this spell, it would be very easy to handle the rest. Wang Ling looked up at the sky and searched for the black magic ball, which Wind Spirit had thrown into the air. Then, he directly spoke telepathically to the two heavenly Tao inside the magic ball. Gaia! In the next moment, the clouds in the sky dispersed. Chapter 524. After that, there was a long period of silence. The world was quiet as immortal Zhenyuan and his heart demon Wind Spirit looked up at the sky. Because Little Master Ling's mind-reading ability was currently connected to Loopy Toad, Loopy Toad had clearly heard Wang Ling's telepathic message to the heavenly Tao. If it wasn't for the fact that there were outsiders here, Loopy Toad felt that it wouldn't have been able to keep its expression straight. Its little master had actually directly roared back at the heavenly Tao. What kind of operation was this? Wang Ling, who had turned invisible, also gazed at the sky, which had returned to tranquility, and sighed deeply in his heart. Sure enough, in this day and age, you still had to rely on roaring, Loopy Toad. What F*** King roaring? On the other side, immortal Zhenyuan and Wind Spirit, the product of his inner demon, were practically thinking the same thing. Immortal Zhenyuan. Wind Spirit. Who could tell them what had just happened? A moment later, Wind Spirit couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. F***K. His big one had actually been cut off. No, to be more precise, it was as if his big one had directly disappeared. This scene had been too sudden, and neither immortal Zhenyuan nor his inner demon had expected it. Just a few seconds ago, after immortal Zhenyuan's gravity had been restored, he had used his immortal eye to see that the God-exploding heavenly stars spell was still in progress. Not only had the entire drought star been sealed in vicious chi, even the ground had started to collapse like crazy. However, in just the time it took to stare at it, all the unusual movements disappeared completely in the blink of an eye. Throughout the entire process, immortal Zhenyuan had been using his immortal eye to check on the vicious chi surrounding drought star. He didn't know if it was an illusion. The red-haired young man felt that rather than saying that the vicious chi enveloping drought star had disappeared, it was better to say that it had fled. It was as if it had encountered some natural enemy or prehistoric beast, and had instantly retreated without a trace. So, this was Senior Dog's doing? At that moment, both of their gazes involuntarily turned to Loopy Toad. It was very obvious, because they didn't know anything about this Senior Dog, who had appeared with the golden light shield at all. But the problem was, Senior Dog didn't move at all. Since the moment he appeared, he had been floating in the air. No matter how the environment around him changed, he was like a terracotta army. He stood calmly in the air with his eyes closed, and he used the most relaxed posture to neutralize Wind Spirit's attacks. This was a 12th stage spell. The power of a level 11 spell was enough to destroy a planet. Even an idiot would know how powerful a 12th grade spell was. If Wind Spirit's divine explosion of heavenly stars had succeeded, it wouldn't just be Drought Star. The link between the human world and the demon realm would also be destroyed, and in the worst-case scenario, the force of the explosion might directly rush out through the gate to another world, causing great damage to both worlds. Although it wouldn't be completely destroyed, if it were to explode, the consequences would be unimaginable. In that moment, immortal Zhenyuan suddenly felt the real gap between realms. He thought that after cultivating to the immortal venerable realm, he was already standing at the peak of the world. However, there was still a mountain higher than the mountain. Immortal Zhenyuan surmised that this Senior Dog's strength was at least at Sage Immortal level. This was a realm above Venerable Immortal. It was a whole level higher than Venerable Immortal. Rumor had it that a sage Immortal Almighty had at least 81 heavenly Tao in their bodies. Furthermore, these 81 heavenly Tao were the minimum requirement to become a sage Immortal. Only a sage Immortal with 81 heavenly Tao. Immortal Zhenyuan pondered in his heart, as he wondered how many heavenly Tao Senior Dog had in its body. To be able to neutralize the attack of a 12th grade spell so easily, the number of heavenly Tao in its body had to be more than 100 at the very least. At this thought, Immortal Zhenyuan couldn't help clicking his tongue repeatedly in his heart. He never thought that there would actually be a sage Immortal expert in this world who was stronger than a Venerable Immortal. How big was the gap between a Venerable Immortal and a sage Immortal? Take the simplest example. For example, Immortal Zhenyuan could freely travel through the Milky Way and even move a planet over. However, celestial sages could create their own planets. One was a planet porter. The other could create a planet. That was the difference. To build a planet, it was far from enough to just learn how to create a small world and a great world, because it also involved the shaping of a star core and filling in the nomological framework. These were things that could only be created after mastering multiple heavenly Tao. The red-haired young man felt that he was still far from that level. Sure enough, if you didn't compare yourself to a strong expert, you would never recognize the gap between you and them. He didn't even move, yet he easily disintegrated a Tier 12 spell. Maybe this was what a big shot was like. While the red-haired young man felt extremely disappointed, a fire was ignited in his heart once again. It looked like he would have to closely follow in Senior Dog's footsteps in the future. At that moment, the red-haired young man's eyes were already full of stars as he prostrated himself in reverence toward Loopy Toad. Senior Dog 1, do you accept disciples? Wang Ling, Loopy Toad. On the other side of the sky, Wind Spirit gritted his teeth fiercely at this scene, and the hostility in his heart bubbled up again. For some reason, when he saw the red-haired young man's expression toward a dog, he couldn't suppress the rage in his heart. Why? Wind Spirit suddenly roared. His chest heaved up and down as he gasped for breath, anger surging in his chest. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. Wind Spirit's eyes were fixed on the red-haired young man on the other side. Why, you never showed it to me. Immortal Zhenyuan was startled. Why should I? Wang Ling. Loopy Toad couldn't help letting out a huh in its heart. Wind Spirit. I was talking about your expression. Immortal Zhenyuan. To be honest, after seeing his grade 12 spell inexplicably neutralized by Senior Dog, Wind Spirit knew that he already had no chance of winning this fight. Because this was already his most powerful killing move, and also his final trump card. A moment later, Immortal Zhenyuan stared at Wind Spirit and couldn't help sighing softly. Wind Spirit, are you jealous? Because it hadn't completely materialized. Wind Spirit's facial features weren't fully formed, and only a rough outline could be seen. Wind Spirit instantly clenched his teeth, as if he had been poked in a sore spot. Jealous? You say I'm jealous? Why should I be jealous? You created me. And now you're doing everything you can to destroy me. He lowered his head gloomily, his whole body trembling. So I won't let you off easy. In the next moment, Wind Spirit moved again. He pounced directly at Immortal Zhenyuan, wanting to hug him. At that moment, Wang Ling, who had turned incorporeal, suddenly sensed the strange energy inside Wind Spirit's body condensing like crazy. Did he want to self-destruct? Wang Ling raised his hand and cast the Great Suppression spell. Wind Spirit's entire body froze, and at the same time, he felt the restless energy in his body calm down once again. It wasn't just his body. Even his aura and realm had regressed in that instant. At that moment, the red-haired young man stared at the heart demon incarnation, which was only a few meters away from him, and was slightly absent-minded. Still not attacking. At that moment, Loopy Toad couldn't help reminding him. Now that Wind Spirit was completely suppressed, and even his realm had regressed, this was the best chance for Immortal Zhenyuan to kill him with his own hands. Because of what Wind Spirit had said earlier, Immortal Zhenyuan was also pondering it in his heart. I'm sorry, Wind Spirit. You shouldn't have appeared in this world. Immortal Jinyuan stretched out one hand and pressed it against Wind Spirit's hair, which looked a little like a caress. Wang Ling noticed that at that moment, the red-haired young man was smiling at Wind Spirit. Wind Spirit already couldn't hold back his tears. Boom! In the next moment, there was the sound of an explosion from Immortal Jinyuan's palm. This person, whom Immortal Jinyuan had been entangled with for a long time, and whom he called Wind Spirit. Chapter 525. This world was full of all kinds of helplessness to begin with. Before Jinyuan had truly and thoroughly destroyed Wind Spirit, he had hated it to the bone. This was an energy body that had transformed from his inner demon, and had the same memories and abilities as him. Even after it had taken on a physical form, it had the same appearance as him. Wind Spirit's existence was like a mirror, except that it reflected the darkest side of Immortal Jinyuan's heart. Everyone had a dark side. Even the peerless cultivators, and the righteous swordsmen, who roamed the Jianghu with swords all had dark sides. Because where there was light, there was always darkness. There were also places where light couldn't be found, however. When it came to dark things, people's first instinct in the depths of their hearts was always to escape. That was their most unreal self, and also their truest self. Thus, after the primordial qi had filled his body, the inner demon had evolved into Wind Spirit, and Immortal Jinyuan had always thought of a way to kill it. However, after Wind Spirit had truly been reduced to ashes, he had felt a little lonely in his heart. It was a very strange feeling that he couldn't put into words. But the moment he had killed Wind Spirit, the red-haired young man had felt a little heartache. This scene also made the incorporeal Wang Ling ponder deeply. But after destroying the inner demon, did it disappear completely? Of course not. The inner demon always existed, and couldn't be completely destroyed. A lot of the time, powerful cultivators in high positions would choose to go into seclusion for a long time, not to advance their realms, but to stabilize their minds and suppress their inner demons. Desires were always endless. After reaching a new height, they would always want to break through to the next level. As long as you were on the path of cultivation and growth, you would definitely encounter all kinds of things that would prompt the birth of your inner demon. Immortal Jinyuan's inner demon was just a product of an accidental mutation, and it wasn't just because the primordial qi had cleansed his mind. This was just one of the reasons, and the specific reason for it was unknown. But this incident gave Wang Ling a wake-up call. Did he have an inner demon? Of course he did. It was just that the primordial qi was currently controlling his emotions. If the primordial qi was truly controllable one day, an inner demon would be born. The greatest courage a person could muster at this time was to face their own darkness head-on. And the hardest thing for a person to break through was to surpass himself. He wondered how he would deal with an inner demon like Wind Spirit in the future. To be honest, after dealing with Wind Spirit, it wasn't just Immortal Jinyuan. Even Wang Ling and Loopy Toad sank into a long melancholy. This lesson was very real and very profound. Sometimes, the lessons brought about by a battle were far more profound than what was taught in textbooks or in class. As the saying goes, true knowledge comes from practice. The same logic applied to cultivators now. But in a society where the rule of law was universal, the younger generation of cultivators, in Wang Ling's generation, basically learned mostly theory. Apart from the agriculture, military training, and actual combat classes, which were arranged by schools every year, there were really too few opportunities for them to engage in actual combat training. Moreover, the most important premise of these officially arranged practical training was safety. But this was precisely the most insignificant part. Not so long ago, heroes had always been born in troubled times in the cultivation world. Every year at the National Cultivators Congress, representatives would propose increasing the number of opportunities for practical training and setting the difficulty of it. As long as it wasn't fatal, it didn't matter if one was seriously injured. Because no matter how serious an injury was, modern cultivation technology and all kinds of elixirs could be used to recover without leaving any sequelae. A lot of people felt that the younger generation of modern cultivators were mostly flowers raised in a greenhouse. Although it was a pretty good era of peace now, who could guarantee that this peace would last forever? The red-haired young man floated in the air. After exterminating Wind Spirit, his palm didn't fall, but stared in the direction in which it had disappeared and pondered for a long time. During this time, Wang Ling had already collected the energy source on Drought Star according to the designated coordinates using the energy harvester he had given to him. Wang Ling didn't know whether this abnormal energy source was primordial qi or some other special kind of energy. Furthermore, it was too thin, and there were a lot of other gases mixed in here. Wang Ling couldn't make an accurate judgment, and would only know after Wang Ming compared it with the equipment. When Wang Ling came back with the energy, he noticed that the red-haired young man who had been deep in thought in the air was actually holding a red diamond-shaped crystal in his hand. The red-haired young man broke out in a sweat as he asked Loopy Toad, "Senior Dog, do you know what this is?" The red-haired young man had also suddenly seen this crystal. Not long after Wind Spirit had been exterminated, he had noticed glittering dust gathering in the air, and then slowly coalescing into a crystal like this. The corners of Loopy Toad's mouth twitched. Sage? Sage stone? Wang Ling. Goddamn sage stone. Wang Ling felt that this crystal looked a little familiar. He searched his memory bank based on the crystal structure, and then found something called a heart demon stone, which was very similar to this crystal. He sent a telepathic message to Loopy Toad, and it was responsible for passing on the message. Do you know about the heart demon stone? Heart demon stone? Immortal Jinyuan was blank. In order to find a way to restrain Wind Spirit, he had looked up a lot of information on heart demons, and it seemed that he had seen some information on this heart demon stone. Unfortunately, all the information he had looked through were ancient texts, and there wasn't even a single picture of it. Now that he was reminded very quickly, the red-haired young man recalled something. So this is the heart demon stone. This was an energy crystal obtained after eliminating the heart demon. It was mainly composed of 90% solid primordial qi and 10% rare metal elements. According to the ancient texts, the heart demon stone could be used for cultivation. After defeating the heart demon, you could cultivate with the help of the stone. If you held the stone in your mouth during a battle, you could even directly increase the concentration of your primordial qi and increase the power of your spells. The heart demon stone was very rare. Furthermore, basically anything that could be found in ancient texts from that era couldn't be bought in the modern cultivation world. Immortal Jinyuan sighed. This was his only gain from eliminating Wind Spirit this time. But for some reason, he still couldn't be happy. At that moment, the red-haired young man suddenly turned his head to look at Loopy Toad. By the way, how did Senior Dog get here? Loopy Toad looked away, not daring to meet the red-haired young man's gaze. I just happened to pass by. Nonsense. It couldn't answer that it had been brought here by the toilet, right? Chapter 526. Loopy Toad's answer was actually quite ambiguous, but out of respect for Senior Dog, the red-haired young man didn't think too much about it. Sometimes, it was really possible that he had made a small mistake while traveling through space and accidentally fell down to save the world. Actually, it was possible that he had saved the world. There were too many things in this world that couldn't be explained with common sense. Moreover, Jinyuan felt in his heart that big shots generally had very unique ways of thinking. Senior Dog definitely had its own unique reasons for being able to cultivate to such a high realm. On the other side, Wang Ling had already collected the gas data that Wang Ming had given him, and was going to let Loopy Toad go. To be honest, this fight with Wind Spirit this time had given Wang Ling a deep understanding of the strength of a venerated immortal, which was actually a little disappointing. He had thought that a venerated immortal was already very strong, but unfortunately, this level of combat strength wasn't enough at all. Although a venerated immortal had already begun to master the use of heavenly Tao, their comprehension of it was still far from enough. To be proficient in a heavenly Tao, one had to spend a lot of effort to cultivate it. Furthermore, when it came to comprehending a heavenly Tao, it actually depended a lot on luck. That was because a heavenly Tao was divided into many characteristics, and the strongest characteristic of all heavenly Tao was that it was proficient in everything. Of the 3,000 great spells that Wang Ling had currently mastered, all of his characteristics were of the highest level. So there were times when even Wang Ling himself felt that he was a little too strong. Wang Ling had originally wanted to ask more about the Immortal's treasure house, but after the battle, he instantly lost all interest. At that moment, Loopy Toad couldn't help asking the red-haired young man, "What are you going to do after this?" This wasn't Wang Ling's question, but Dog 2's own. Jin Yuan pinched the Heart Demon Stone and sighed. "I'll use this Heart Demon Stone to restore Drought Star to how it was before." "You're quite obsessed with finding a second planet." Loopy Toad smiled. "There's nothing I can do about it." The red-haired young man shrugged his shoulders. While he seemed to speak very casually, he actually felt a little regretful in his heart. Although there's still a long time before the spirit chi of heaven and earth is completely used up, given the current rate of extraction of the Earth's environment, it might be destroyed before the spirit chi is used up. Senior should know this better than me, right? Loopy Toad turned its face away a little awkwardly. Of course. Although all the countries have signed the International True Immortal Convention to protect the spirit chi of heaven and earth as much as possible, the damage to the environment is real, said Immortal Jin Yuan. The International True Immortal Convention that he mentioned was an agreement signed by all the countries in the world. All the true immortal experts had put their fingerprints on it and swore an oath. According to the convention, in order to protect the spirit chi of heaven and earth that had been overexploited on earth, all perfected immortals were not allowed to use the samsara spirit tribulation to ascend to immortal venerables. On one hand, the samsara spirit tribulation consumed too much spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was very likely that the spiritual chi of an area would be sucked dry in a short period of time, resulting in a spiritual chi hole. As a result, a large amount of spiritual chi was lost along with the hole. On the other hand, there were currently no immortal venerable powerhouses among the leaders of the various countries. Therefore, advancing from a true immortal to an immortal venerable was actually a move that broke the balance of power between the countries. And in order to achieve long-term peace in the modern cultivation world, the International True Immortal Convention was born. So the truth was that General Yi, Marshal Jiang, Secretary Sun Dekong, President Qi, Minister Shi, the 10 founding generals actually had enough resources to advance to venerable immortal level. However, these resources referred to materials other than spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Only spiritual chi of heaven and earth was special. It was a product of nature, and once it was used up, it would be difficult to maintain. Thus, there were currently two major research topics in the scientific world. The first was how to develop a new method for true immortals to advance to venerable immortal level without using the old method of extracting the spirit chi of heaven and earth, like the samsara spirit tribulation, without putting too much burden on the natural environment. The second was whether it was possible to develop an instrument that could replace spiritual chi of heaven and earth, or generate it. These two studies sounded easy, but they were in fact very difficult. Every 6 months, all the major countries would hold a joint meeting of experts to share and discuss their research. So far, however, there had been no practical solutions, and many of the theories put forward were even fantastical and unworkable. Given this premise, there were in fact a lot of people like Immortal Jin Yuan who wanted to develop a second planet. Wang Ling knew quite a bit about this. This was the first time he had ever scored full marks in a science class in junior high school. And it was also the first time in his life that he had ever scored 100. Furthermore, Father Wang hadn't blamed him for doing so well. Because at that time, everyone in his class had scored 100. So, you created the gate between worlds to hide this drought star that you found? Also, I heard that the gate between worlds has descended on the human world dozens of times. Was it because you were conducting an improved version of the test? At that moment, Loopy Toad asked a very important question. It would have been better if it hadn't asked this question. But when it did, Immortal Genuine started to sigh in his heart again. As expected of Senior Dog, it even knew that it was the one who had invented the gate between worlds. Senior, you misunderstand. I invented the gate between worlds purely to build a bridge between the demon world and the human cultivation world. If I really wanted to deal with the spirit chi of heaven and earth, I thought it would be a good idea to connect with the demon world and discuss countermeasures with them. But little did I know that the gate between worlds could be used. Speaking up to this point, Immortal Genuine sighed. The last few times it suddenly descended, it was all because of wind spirit. In the end, the rumor was that I was the one doing a performance test for the gate between worlds. So this was the truth. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad nodded inwardly. Wang Ling could directly tell that Immortal Genuine wasn't lying. This actually made sense. Given Genuine's personality, summoning the gate between worlds to destroy a city didn't make sense to begin with. Before leaving, Loopy Toad sighed and looked at the extent of Drought Star's damage. The battle just now had already destroyed 1/6 of Drought Star's surface. 1/6 might seem small, but Drought Star was an entire planet. Even if it was smaller than Earth, it was still a huge area. Young man, work hard. Before leaving, Dog 2 pretended to be proud of its age and experience as it greeted Genuine. In fact, in some ways, it wasn't just Dog 2. Even Wang Ling actually had a good impression of Immortal Genuine. Nowadays, there were too few people who chose to quietly sacrifice themselves for the greater good of humanity. Although choosing to move to the second planet was a pretty extreme idea. At the very least, Genuine was contributing to the sustainable development of humanity in the future. Senior, wait. At that moment, the red-haired young man called out to it. Senior Dog, will we ever meet again? Loopy Toad turned its head. We'll see when the time comes. At that moment, Wang Ling was already stamping his foot. As long as they dodged 3 times, Lord Ma would send them back. Senior Dog, this is for you. As soon as he said that, the red-haired young man threw a jade pendant at Loopy Toad, which caught it firmly with its dog paw. The moment it saw the jade pendant, Wang Ling's eyes lit up. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.